Are we live, April? Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our regular meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners on this Tuesday, October 26th at 8:30 a.m. 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and please rise and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any adjustments to the agenda this morning? Hearing or seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Motion support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us on to the public comment period. Are there any members who would like to speak during the public comment period this morning? It's an opportunity for members of the public to speak on any issue just addressing the board, and I don't see anyone in the audience this morning for that. Is there any written comments? Okay. In which case, I'll close the public comment period and move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that a commissioner would like to pull this morning? Doesn't sound like it or look like it, so I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
I support.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Very good. That brings us down to item 4 on the agenda, Community Center / Extension Director Introduction. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, nice to see you all. My name is Sarah Waddle, and I just started about a month ago up at the Community Center as the new Community Center Director and Extension Educator for the county. And I just wanted to take a minute to come before you and introduce myself so we can all just see each other and just share a very brief update on what's been going on up there so far. In the last month, I've been working a lot with Diane to learn and download as many of the amazing things in her brain as possible before she departs next Monday is her final day. And I've also just been taking the opportunity to meet lots of community members and folks who have been involved in all the different programs and things that happen through Extension and the Community Center. Last week had the opportunity to meet with the Extension County Board as well as the Community Center Board. Look forward to working with both of those groups going forward. Most immediately, I'll be out on parental leave very soon for the next 3 months, and then when I return after that, I'll be diving into all the extension programming and community center programming that we have here and opportunities for new things going forward too. So just appreciate the chance to meet you all and look forward to working together going forward.
Yeah, thank you. A wonderful introduction.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Sarah right out of the gate here? Or any thoughts, comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, Mr. Yorkie.
I just want to say, first of all, we are thrilled to have Sarah on board. She has really hit the ground running, really pleased with all the connections she's making, and in fact, came into this job with a number of connections in the community, having worked at the North House Folk School. Mm-hmm. So she's already a fixture in Grand Marais, Cook County, and we're really glad to have her on board. The other thing I wanted to note is lest her news about parental leave cause any angst. We are working with the extension program at the University of Minnesota to get some backfill while Sarah is out. So we are working on that and expect to have somebody in place. We also are talking to a former county employee who is willing to serve as sort of the assistant role while we're recruiting for Isabella Sheehan's position. And so I just met with her yesterday. So we are working to get things filled and provide coverage while Sarah is out. Obviously, the community relies a lot on the community center for all kinds of programs and services, and we want to make sure those are uninterrupted over the next several months. So just really happy to have Sarah on board and really pleased with the job that she's doing for us already. Thanks,
Thank
Sarah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would second that already. I feel like you're doing an excellent job of gathering the input from both boards and just really appreciate your leadership and your presence so far. So thank you for all you've done already after just 1 month. So.
Yeah.
And welcome aboard
Thank
again.
you. Yeah, yeah. See you all around.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, we are ahead of schedule here, so I'll skip item 5 for the public hearings. They need to happen at 9 o'clock and 9:10 at the earliest for both and all. We'll move on to item 6 with the highway, if we may, Engineer Haas. The first one is 6A, Mill the Hill and Little Devil Track River Bridge Replacement.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Let's see. Caught me off guard. Half
I
hour-
thought I was afraid of that. Yeah.
Half hour ahead of schedule. I got the things open that I need and not. So this project is scheduled for 2024. The short of it is it's a federally funded and state aid funded project. And so federal comes, I think back in the day we used to get annual allocations from the federal government. That stopped. Counties, they rotate them every, I think it's like 5 to 7 years, we'll get this type of federal funding. And so this project, Kristen, actually, when she was here, had to kind of decide where a project was going. And so the decision was in that area. So this is it's on the Gunflint Trail. It's the lower portion. So it's from 5th Avenue West up to Four Corners. The idea is to expand it from 3 lanes to 4 lanes, heading up. Improve the intersection at Four Corners there, so include some turn lanes, so traffic can keep moving, people can turn safely. And then what we decided to put in as well was, since we're ripping up the road, is a bridge replacement. And so that culvert or bridge, that's about 30 feet beneath the road there, is one of our wonderful structurally deficient culverts. And so I thought, hey, if we're ripping it up, let's go ahead and great time to replace it. So we ended up, I put out an RFP, a request for proposals, back in August, I believe, to kind of the consulting community. We got 3 responses, which was great. I think you can say on there we got 3 responses from AECom, LHB, and MSA. So I would like to award the contract to AECom for $174,000, $935.95. How we came to that conclusion is, it's based off of kind of how their proposal was structured. Did they understand the project? Cost, obviously, hours, the team they had put together. There's a number of factors that goes into it. And yeah, it's kind of where that's landing right now. Anybody have any questions, I guess, on that?
Yes? Oh, Commissioner Hawkins, yeah.
Yes. This was discussed at our highway department meeting, and then I'm still learning
No,
how
fine.
this process works.
Yes.
So the design process happens before you get public input on widening lanes and all that?
Yes, so right now, that's the proposal, and so what the proposal was going forward was to widen it, just based off of some rumblings that we've heard that, yes, it might be good to widen it. If the consensus comes back, after a lot of public input, that's like, nope, we want it at 3 lanes. Fine, then we'll keep it at 3 lanes. So right now, that's just what I had put out for potential services, so, yes.
And I just keep going back to our transportation study that we paid many thousands of dollars for, and in that, it said, public doesn't want new roads, they just want to fix what we have, so widening, I'm not against
Sure.
it per se, I'm just raising, when's the right time to spend money on design services? Is it before a public meeting or after you get public input? And
Like design services for the project as a whole?
yeah,
Oh, so this project is massive. We can't do this in-house. Yeah. So what, are you referring to that transportation study where it was, yeah, the overwhelming majority of people just fix what we have?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So fixing what we have requires design services, though, from some of the consulting community. So in this case, we have the capacity in-house with our team to do some projects. An example would be like Carlson Creek on Moose Valley Road. We're finishing those plans right now, but that was all done internally. We don't have the capacity to really do much more than 1 or 2 projects in-house at a time. And so to do more, we call the consulting community, which we do quite a bit. Pick a lot of projects. Cross River, all the Gunflint projects, Sawbill, Alfred Creek. So in a sense, it's fixing what we have. Nothing's new. A new thing would be an additional lane, you're correct. But we can hash that out, I guess, once things get going with that.
And just to clarify, we need the service whether we do 3 lanes or 4 lanes there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
what Commissioner
That's what-
Hawkins' concern
I'm
is.
just trying to
Yeah.
understand
Sure.
when
Yeah.
you get public input.
Oh, yeah. So
Should
this
it be
this
3
is
or
just
4
the,
lanes?
I put out, hey, we want to do this project, here's roughly what it's going to look like, who wants to do it? And then we get replies, and then I say, okay, you do it. And then that's kind of when this ball starts rolling of public input and in that, in a timely manner. I know we're dealing with a lot of projects, we'll obviously get to that a little bit later, that stay out in the public for quite a long time, so it can kind of get confusing as to how this whole process works. So normally, hopefully this will be a wonderful example of how things will work going forward, from start to finish.
Thank you for clarifying
Yes.
that. for me.
That's a good question, just to make sure we know how the process works. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I just wanted to give appreciation for the exploration of the 4 lanes, because I have had individuals contact me about concerns about safety, about people crossing that double yellow line when they're behind a logging truck and wondering if lanes could be added. So I do think it's important to explore it, and later on, those community conversations will be very valuable.
Absolutely.
Engineer Haas, I am not familiar with AECom. Is that somebody that we've done business with in the past?
No, I don't think they've done any work up here. For what it's worth, I think they're either the largest or the second largest civil engineering firm in the world. So that's kind of neat.
Well,
No, there's a lot of horsepower that they can bring up here, and
Oh,
so I'm
wow.
excited to work with them. Just work on a project with them for the next couple of years, see what they can bring.
great, yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions for Engineer Haas? No? Okey dokey. At which point I would entertain a motion here.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Sullivan?
I'd like to move to approve the contract be awarded to AECom for $174,935.95.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. I'll do the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Engineer Haas. Moving on to item 6B, the school speed zone signs.
Yes. So I think we all kind of remember this discussion from a little while ago, designating the school speed zone there on 5th Street in front of ISD 166 and GES. We had talked about, a proposed sign layout, and, at the time, I didn't have an exact quote for how much this would cost, and I think, at the time I had said I can't imagine it going over 100, and so thankfully it did not. So there, I guessed correctly. But attached is the couple of quotes we received from Safety Signs. They would be doing the install and the removal of just the signs and the posts, and then for Hunt Electric. to do the speed feedback and the pedestrian flasher signs. And so that total came in at $81,392. Thankfully, there is a Safe Routes to School grant available. I've applied for it. Haven't heard back yet. So hopefully we get it. That would cover everything, and that would be awesome. But if it doesn't, we get, this will be covered under our municipal state aid funds that we receive every single year. And so I think either way we're covered, which is good. And I think the plan is for next spring, most likely, somewhere in there, once the ground starts to thaw, is when we should be installing. Yeah.
Great. Any questions from commissioners on this item? Just looking at the map, I really do like the map. The intersection of the Gunflint Trail and County Road 7 is pretty busy.
It got squished
in a
on the
number of
picture.
ways.
It
But
looks, yeah.
but do you know the specifics there about those four corners? Like, are there signs on all four corners? Are there crossings?
Well, so it's because it is, there's pedestrians crossing on all that. So yeah, you would have, indications of pedestrian crossing on, all four of those corners. I think it looks like, however, the packet gets put to that everything got squished. And so probably looks a little worse than it will be, but.
Well, no, it wasn't exactly clear to me, so I was just,
Sure, no, that's fair.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, anywhere somebody is crossing, there'll be the pedestrian sign with a little arrow saying, here you go. And then where the school zones, begin and end, the new speed limit, 20 miles an hour during the times that's enforced. I think it's 7:30 to 8:30 and 2:30 to 3:30, if I remember right. So, yeah.
Okey-dokey. I think that was my only question. Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Hawkins?
Any talk about striping? I look at that map and, okay, I get the safety aspect of it.
Sure.
I also thought, oh my gosh, more sign pollution. So that was my first reaction to the map. But I just am somebody who likes striping on the road. So we push that issue at all? And making
I
sure
think
we
that's
get
something.
striping?
I remember you had brought that up, I think when Andrea and I were both here talking about it. And that is, I know they had done that big striping thing. It was before I got here, but you can still see the remnants of it out in front. And I don't think that, like something to that scale, I don't think we'll be doing again. But as far as crosswalk striping, I think that's something. Where did we leave that? I thought we had talked with the city, and the city does the striping, and then I think they're done striping this year, so probably next summer or something like that.
That's correct. They had agreed that when they next brought it out, that they would, that one intersection you brought up, that they
There
would
we go.
include that intersection, and they would stripe that next year.
That was that
I
one.
just want to keep bringing it up and
I
make
gotcha.
sure nobody forgets that it's going to get
We
done.
won't. Yes. Yeah,
It was
no,
supposed to
we'll
get done this last summer, but,
fair enough.
yeah.
We'll coordinate here, actually, so I don't forget. I'll make a note.
And so there was particularly one intersection that you were,
Yeah, by the
Getting
community
feedback?
center on
By the
Third
community
Avenue.
center.
yeah. Great. Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Hearing or seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair. A
Commissioner
motion
Swanson.
to award contracts to Safety Signs for $15,100 and Hunt Electric for $66,292 for a total of $81,392.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Engineer Haas.
Thank you all.
Good to see you. Have a great day.
See you in 10 minutes.
That's right.
So we're on to item 7 here. Assessor Thompson, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
We
Thank
have
you.
you. Yeah, we have you as 7A Property Tax Abatements.
Yes, so we have 4 applications for property tax abatement today. I broke them into 2 categories, one for clerical error abatements and then another for a hardship, medical hardship abatement. Are there any questions on the document that I've attached there related to those first 3 abatements?
The first 3 abatements, I don't have any questions. Anyone else have any questions?
No.
Okay.
Well, I guess I do.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Are
Yep.
we going to discuss the DNR, who owns the land, and is it us, or is it DNR?
My understanding was it's DNR. Based on
But they're not
what we were
claiming.
provided, that was made clear that he stated he had confirmed it's DNR.
Okay,
Right.
so it is DNR property, and do we receive, is it part of PILT money we get for that then? We get our $25? Whatever.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm not sure if it is in the PILT calculation or not. I know when what the DNR has indicated is that they don't have it in their inventory. Brady has been communicating with somebody from the DNR, and they said they had no record of owning that lot, from what I understand.
So we are not collecting on that lot.
Okay, I think we need to figure out whose land it is that we're abating then.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so I went into the recorder's office when this first came up, and Holly had dug through some of the old books and pages, and she said that, in the early 1900s, it was transferred from the Bureau of Land Management, the feds, into state ownership. I don't recall if that was into the School Land Trust or something else, DNR, but they subdivided this larger parcel, sold off most of the lots, all but lot 13, which is this lot. I'm assuming that for all the years, everyone just made the assumption that it was a DNR lot and that, nothing would probably ever come of it, and it would just sit there as kind of a preservation land type. But the DNR, it's a mystery to me how it wouldn't be in their inventory then. So, yeah, I think that it's going to take some communication with the DNR and then looking through more of the recorder's documents to see if maybe something ever was done with that lot 13.
And so, I guess to address Commissioner Hawkins' concern, your recommendation is to abate it at this point but continue with that investigation?
Right, yeah, it was on our tax records as a DNR lot for all those years, and somehow it got tagged into a parcel transfer for an actual sale that occurred adjacent to that lot. Mm-hmm. And when it came to the attention that parcel wasn't included in the sale, it got changed back to the exempt entity. Unfortunately, the classification never got changed. We just never had that connection between auditor and assessor's office to exempt it. But yeah, it's been exempt for all those years, so my recommendation would be to abate this 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there are called omitted properties that occur.
What was that word?
It's called omitted.
Omitted? Okay.
Properties. I think it's, my understanding is usually happens with, when they go out and do surveys, and maybe the survey isn't accurate, maybe it doesn't include something, maybe. So I think it would take that kind of effort. It might take that kind of effort to determine the ownership on it. Surveys and maybe attorneys involved, et cetera. But
That sounds exciting.
yeah. So
Expensive.
that's probably why it sits.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it takes a lot of effort sometimes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the first 3 then? Okay. On to the 4th one then?
Yes, so I received an application from a relative, and that was early last week, and since then I have communicated with Cliff Lambert, and based on the conversation I had with Cliff late last week after this was put into the agenda, this isn't going to meet our abatement policy for a medical hardship. So on that one, I would be recommending not to approve. But initially, when this came over, it was kind of unclear, and I wanted it to be a board decision, not a auditor assessor a decision on this.
Thank you, and thank you for, investigating a little bit, doing more follow-up, and appreciate that. So you're recommending not abating item number 4?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. I don't feel this meets our hardship abatement policy, and I have discussed this with Attorney Hicken.
Okay. And the recommendation is to abate the first 3.
Correct.
All right, any questions about the 4th one? We haven't discussed that amongst the commissioners here. Doesn't look like it, doesn't sound like it, and so then I'll entertain a motion or 2.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd like to move to approve the 3 clerical error abatements.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Do we need action on the 4th one? As far as, yeah,
I believe we do,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
so I'd entertain a motion there.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to deny the medical hardship abatement.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Commissioner Hawkins, support. We have, any further discussion there? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously to deny the medical hardship abatement. Thank you, Assessor Thompson. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Nope. So I just want to thank you guys for taking a look at these this morning, and I look forward to meeting with you guys in the October 26th meeting about a month from now, or November 26th meeting about a month from now, and we can kind of go over our sales ratio study. We have more than half of the sales entered in. We probably have 3/4 of the sales entered in as of today. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll get the last of those sales into our study, so we'll have all the final numbers kind of by that time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well, we have 2 more minutes here, and we have Mr. Tim Nelson in the house. Is this good?
Should we take a break? Not take a break?
I think we could have time to talk about your item, if you'd be so kind, sir. This is item 8 under Land Services. 8A is the renewal of vacation rental web services.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, all. This is actually just a renewal of services of our web-based vacation rental administrative type services. This fortunately is one of the elements of the program that we have that pays for itself out of the licensing fees, so this is not an adverse impact on the budget. We actually benefit from this, and it has been successful, quite successful so far in terms of both the level of services that we get out of it and the flexibility in terms of when we've needed to tweak or gain other types of information, that they've worked with us very well. As I indicated in the report, we did sign on to this vacation rental program for a period of 3 years to do basically an initial run of this and then do a full review. That full review is going to take place next year in the next summer. So we'll be able to take a full comprehensive look at how the program goes, the ordinance, and the subscription services that we have, and basically just renewing this for a year gets us to that point where we'll be able to do a full review of everything.
Great.
That's
Any
really
questions for Mr. Nelson? Commissioner Hawkins?
I'm wondering how many calls on the 24/7 hotline you've received in the last year.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hawkins, that's actually a good point. I was reflecting on that back in the corner, wondering what kinds of questions would be asked, and I can say the predominant number of questions on that hotline have been people wanting to know how to go through the process of getting their vacation rental license. We don't really get complaints per se through that. Most of the complaints, if they do happen, go through either our administrative line during the day or the law enforcement. But the vast majority of the calls through that hotline have been assistance calls, just wondering how they can get licensed.
So that's why I question renewing that part of the contract, if it really isn't beneficial to our operations. Or I just am wondering why we would want to continue that portion of it.
Actually, I would say that it has been beneficial in the fact that we have fielded a number of calls on there. I don't want to downplay the number of calls that we have. It's just the topic. We anticipated that there would be a lot of calls with regards to maybe complaints or neighboring impacts or anything like that. But the calls that we do get are basically the ones for assistance, and I think that that's kind of equally important that we get people put on the right path on that. So I'm okay myself with doing it, but it's up to the board if you want to try to strike that portion of it.
And how many short-term rentals do they have right now in their system? Are they looking at? Because originally, when we did this, they thought there were going to be 600 and something, or 363 short-term rentals, and I'm just wondering how close we are to that number today, to what they thought they were going to find.
Well, and that was based on, kind of the definitional purposes. If you define everything that's individually owned and also being a part of a resort, you can get as high as 600, and it's just definitional is what kind of brings it down. We're still anticipating there's about 250 out there, and we're in between 200 and 250 in terms of the ones that we fully captured. And the problem that we've had, especially over these last couple of years with the COVID, is that people have been hesitant to get, though we would have anticipated more, people have been reluctant to actually get their license and operate because they don't know if it's going to be a success or not. And then we've had some that have come out of the blue. There have been some historic ones that decided to drop off for a while. So it's actually a pretty fluid number, but it's averaging between 200 and 250.
And have we figured out the lodging tax issue between departments of making sure that all these units are paying their lodging tax before we have is that part of the review process that this company's doing? Making sure lodging taxes are paid?
It is something that we can add into it. It is an ongoing conversation between us, our department and the auditors in terms of the best mechanism for collecting that, because there are so many variables associated with the geographic locations of the particular rental and the type of tax that's associated with that, all the different geo districts that are out there. It actually, in our discussions with the auditor's office, it may be more preferable to use even RT Vision or some other format in terms of collecting that than it would be for this particular one. We can get the reports generated in terms of using that as the base who needs to have that lodging tax, but in terms of calculating that out and getting it collected, it's actually better. It may be better under a different thing, and we expect that to be under the full review next year as we go through the entire review process.
Yeah, because I think that's kind of more of what our concerns were when we started this process, is making sure that people were paying their taxes and neighbors weren't complaining. Well, we hear neighbors aren't really complaining through this service, so I want to make sure we're purchasing the right kind of services we need to make our operations run more smoothly.
Well, and just to clarify, my understanding of why we entered into this contract in the first place was just to get a better handle on what's going on. Not necessarily that we're suspicious about this or that or the other thing. We just need a better understanding. So collecting data and then having that full report, I think, is really the next step in our understanding. And so I think all of your questions are very important and are very relevant and should be addressed into that understanding and more complete understanding. But I really think that knowing the department's restrictions as far as staffing and time, that the alternative is to have them do more work. We already know there's challenges with just everyone's time, or to have a service do the work that is being paid for by the collection. So it seems like a good move at this point for at least one more year until we get that more complete report. And then we need all the questions, discussed much more thoroughly. But at this point, before Mr. Nelson, Commissioner Storley had her hand up as well.
Oh, thank you. Just to support Tim, when we supported him in doing this program, it was because their office could not handle all of this.
That's right.
So we can just decide in another year if that's something that we want to continue with, but it was to support their office because they couldn't have time
Yeah.
to do all of this. And this company has a lot of statistics that we want to look at.
Yeah, and we don't want to just throw money at something to make it, to manage it, but we are trying to balance both the time and money sort of thing, and we'll get there. But and Mr. Nelson, you had your hand up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to kind of reiterate what it is that you had mentioned in the fact that we, in anticipation of this full review process, we will be approaching the board and even the community in terms of all of the questions that need to be answered during this particular review. I mean, just because it's worked in this particular way for this particular long, we do have a snapshot in terms of what is out there. It is kind of fluid based off of the COVID issues, but we would like to, and we will be approaching the board and everyone else to be able to get those questions so that they are part of this full review next year.
Yeah. No, I look forward to that. That'll be a really good conversation, and we'll, hopefully get a lot more answers and a lot more questions, and then more answers and solutions, maybe. Any other questions for this item though right now? Okay, then I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd like to move to renew the annual subscription for the web-based services from Granicus in the administration of the vacation rental licensing program at the cost of $24,575.25, which is budgeted and fully funded through the vacation rental license fees.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Well, now this brings us to 9:08, so we have gone beyond the legal start times for the necessary start times for our public hearings, at least two of them. That would be both the County Road 45 improvement bonds, and I guess we'll start there, and then after that we'll move on to the public hearing for tax abatement with the Tofte development, and then also at 9:10 we have public hearing for the Sawbill Village tax abatement as well. So Engineer Haas, hello again.
How's it going?
Long time no see.
Long time no see, that's right. So Brady and I thought it would be good to put together a little presentation on this project, namely because it's been going on for so long. I think I'm like the fifth engineer to work on it or something. It's normally not how we do things. So I understand confusion when we even talk about design services, future projects. This is very unusual. But it's a big project, and it's worth kind of a little background. It's short. I think it's like 12 slides or something, so I'll go fast. See if this works.
You don't need to rush, though.
Okay, I'll go nice and slow then. So what are we going to talk about? So we'll just go over project background. There have been a number of previous public meetings. What input has been received, previous cost estimates, old scope, new scope. When I say scope, what the project will entail. That's what I mean by scope. What are the key areas we're going to be focusing on, issues and solutions in those areas, expenses to date, and then project schedule, how we're going to go forward. So background. Initially when this got set out, thankfully we have tons and tons of files on this, so I was able to find kind of the original documents when this thing got proposed, I think at the first public meeting. But project goals and objectives: improve safety, repair and replacement of roadside drainage, reliable access, improved serviceability, and reduced maintenance and operation costs. And I really want to hammer on that point, because I feel like this is a project, and I think I've talked to a couple of you commissioners in the past about this project, and I think it's hard to visually see why things need to get done. It's different when we can go to a bridge and it's rusting, or it's a culvert and the bottom is missing, and you can say, yeah, we need to replace that. Very straightforward. This one is tough. I live there, so I drive it every day. I can see it, especially in the springtime. I think anybody that lives in that area in the springtime knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's a very mushy road. But to me, what really stuck out were these two numbers here. Was, the average cost to maintain our county roads per mile annually is about $11,000. The average County Road 45 cost per mile to maintain it annually is about $72,000. So you can see that we spend a lot of time on that road, shaping it, grading it, putting down more gravel, grading it again. And that, I think, to me, is what really sticks out as the need for something to be done. There's other things, but that's a good one, I think, to start with. Like I had mentioned, there's been a number of public meetings, 3 of them, so October 2017, March 2018, and July 2019. So there's been a lot of public input gathered on these projects, or on this project. So from those, priorities and issues were extracted from those meetings and comments. Not only that, but then on our website and emails, either through the consultant or previous engineers. And so the main consensus was kind of some of these things: keep speeds lower, maintain rural characteristics, intersection improvements at 44, at 7, that Babinock corner, it's where Murmur Creek comes in, and then the Cascade River. Fix soft spots, sight lines, and sight distance, and then maintain the gravel roadway surfacing. I know a big debate was gravel or pavement, but it seemed this one kind of won out, I guess. And so based on those issues, kind of these key areas popped up. County Road 7 intersection, the County Road 44 intersection, and then that road between, the section of Pike Lake Road between 44 and 7, Cascade River curve, the swamp crossing, as we'll call it, that's the section in between the curve and Babinock Corner, Babinock Corner itself, and then the Pike Lake stormwater runoff. So initially, this project came together as a $10 to $12.5 million project. This was based on feedback from the meetings, in the key improvement area. So that's where those numbers were initially coming from. And so this is where things kind of pivoted quite a bit. And this is all around the time I think we were kind of introducing the transportation sales tax up here to begin with. Was this other project that we were doing up on Mineral Center Road. The scope on that project changed. So both Mineral Center Road and County Road 45 were sold, I guess, on the idea of bonding through TST. That was kind of always the plan with those two projects. So obviously, there's a limit to what we can bond. So if the scope on one project changes, that means the scope on the other project has to change. It's just tied together that way. And so what happened is the scope grew on the Mineral Center project, which means we have to reduce the scope, what we're going to do on this other project. So yeah, based on new financial capacity and previous public comments, we revised the budget, determined to be about $6 million then. And so most comments showed a desire for the road to rain gravel, so that alone saves a lot of money instead of paving it. The key areas are still the same. And I think what's really neat is we're still meeting those initial objectives that got put in place in the first place. Improving safety and serviceability, reliable access, repair replacement of roadside drainage, reduced maintenance and operation costs. So these key areas, what are they? Where are they? I'd mentioned County Road 7. And you can see we've actually done a lot of work there already. So some issues that are there: site issues turning onto 7 from 45, Erosion and drainage problems, north side of the hill, initially is very, very steep. It's almost like a cliff. There's no ditch, so it just runs off the hill right into the road and sits there. Boring showed potential for ledge rock. It's very expensive excavation, and so that's why this summer we had our crew go out there and do the work instead of hiring that out. Fortunately, they didn't run into that problem, which was nice, but that's kind of why we wanted us to go out there. It gives us a much more hands-on approach to it, instead of saying, well, there might be rocks, so charge us for that. This is more of exploratory. If we ran into rocks, it's very easy to pivot from that instead of having to, go through a contractor, change orders, whatever it might be. So our crew, I think they did a wonderful job this summer. Even with the drought, there's still grass popping up. I'll take it. So the solutions in this area is trim brush and trees along 7, approaching 45 to improve sight lines. This is reduced from the initial proposal. What they wanted to do was actually blast and excavate along 7. They wanted to drop that whole bank. I know the property owners there weren't very keen on that. To me, it was a very easy one to just be like, just trim the trees. We got to make cuts where we can, and I think that was a good solution. Similarly, having our guys, or our crew, lay back the hill instead of having the contractors do it, that'll save money, and so we did that this past summer. I think this next summer, maybe even before winter, it's still an area that we'll look at and make sure we can shore it up the best we can to prevent erosion. Once the plants are in there, it'll be fine. Obviously, that takes a little bit, so you can see there is a little bit there. And then the hill slope, you can see we laid it back a bit, and then a ditch was installed to improve drainage, so that'll help quite a bit as well. The 44 intersection and the road in between. So sight lines at the intersection is a major issue there. If you're familiar with it, you basically have to get about halfway into Pike Lake Road before you can turn. Drainage, this whole road is basically a drainage nightmare, so drainage pops up quite a bit on this one. And lack of material on the road as well. You can't grade something that isn't there. So the solutions, installing new culverts along the road and at the intersection to improve drainage, remove trees at the intersection to improve sight lines, and then, place another lift of gravel to improve ride quality. The Cascade River curve, this will be a big part of the project. So some issues are the cliff on the riverside is eroding into the road. If you've been out there recently, to me it seems like it's getting closer and closer, but I'm probably just paranoid. But it is. It's eroding very, very close to the road. I saw a couple of accidents even this winter of cars hitting trees, and it's like 5 more feet and you're down that cliff. Very, very concerning. And the curve is dangerous. There's, a trailhead there. People park there. There's no visibility around that curve. There's no shoulder. There's no drainage. It's basically a nightmare. And so the solution is to realign the road away from the cliff. So that'll soften that curve a bit. That improves sight lines, increases safety on the curve. It moves the road away from potentially eroding away. And installing more culverts and proper ditches to help increase drainage. So the swamp crossing section, issues there, poor roadbed quality. That's the really, really mushy part. In the springtime, sometimes it's almost impassable. You can really see people's tire tracks in the springtime veering all over the place trying to get purchase. Lack of material and drainage is an issue there. So in solutions in this part is installing geosynthetics to improve road strength. It's similar to kind of what we did up the Gunflint Trail this past summer with the sag slump. That type of thing will go in there to help strengthen up the road. Place another gravel lift to improve ride quality, have more material there, and then install new culverts and improve ditches to, again, drain water. And then the last 2 areas, Babinaw Corner and the Pike Lake Stormwater runoff. So at Babinaw, sight lines is a big issue there. The intersection's a bit of a parking lot, too, which is never good. You really want clean, you want roads to come in nicely, people know where to stop. So just to clean up that intersection a bit, soften that curve, so it's not quite, I think it's almost 90, it's pretty close to 90 degrees. And have, the Murmur Creek Road and that other, I don't know if it's somebody's driveway, or I think it's a forest road, just come in a lot cleaner to that intersection there. And then at Pike Lake, issues is, sediment runoff into the lake and some erosion. And so regrade the soil, install driveway culverts and ditch work down there, possibly a swale of some kind, plant some stuff there, to help capture some of that sediment runoff. So expenses to date. How much money have we spent? You can see it's kind of broken out into 3 chunks: design services, right-of-way services, and then right-of-way payments. So payments is actually going to the people. Services is going to the designers, LHB and WSB in this case. And so the awarded contract for design services to LHB back in 2017 was a little under $543,000. Because this project has, I won't say drug on so long, but it has, that required an amendment. There's been a lot of redesign on this project, as you can tell, from a $10 to $12.5 million project that was supposed to be paved and whatever, to what we're doing now. It's a lot of reworking, and so that was the required, that's why we had to amend it. And so you can see the revised contract amount and then how much we spent to date. Right-of-way services actually decreased. That contract decreased because the scope shrunk, therefore we don't need as much, so we don't have to pay as much. And then right-of-way payments is just what we think everything will cost and then what we've spent to date. So, project schedule. So right now, they're actually in the field staking the parcels, which is great. So WSB will be able to start getting a hold of people, hopefully this week, to answer questions. If people want to go out onto their property and see what's going to be going on, they'll have the stakes there to kind of show, here's what we have now, here's what's proposed permanent, here's what's proposed temporary. Temporary is just so we can go in for construction. Once construction's done, then that temporary goes away. So 50% plans with an estimate we'll have in early November. Actually, by the end of this month, I'll have them from LHB, but they give us a week or two to review them and then send back comments. So we'll have 50% plans by then. When I made this, I didn't have the date set, but there'll be a public informational meeting on November 15th. It's a Monday. I think it's November 15th. I think from 6 to 7:30, it'll be in this room, in the commissioner's room. Just kind of update people on what's going on, where we're at, what are things looking like. So 90% plans by mid-December, 100% plans late January, kick this thing out for bid in February, construction next summer is the plan. For what it's worth, if you're not familiar with what 50% plans means, it means not that we'll only have half the number of sheets or something like that. It just means that we'll have broad strokes, here's what's going to look like. The difference, I think Brady had asked me a question what the difference between 50 and 100% plans was. So I sent him some examples and then he laughed at me and he goes, I don't need any more information, that's fine. So 50% plans could be like 10 pages and 100% plans turn into like 40 pages. Devil's in the details. So that's kind of the difference without really getting into it. And that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too long. I'm sure there's questions. Obviously, I'm here for questions. So
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Questions from commissioners? I'm really excited.
too.
And the work that was already done is also very exciting. Really impressive, and also just with that. I don't know what it's called, but that erosion control sprayer machine that we authorized.
Hydroseeder.
Yeah, hydroseeder. That works magic. That was really impressive.
We got to
especially
get all of
compared
you
to
out there on the cannon one of those days.
Well, and just comparing that to other projects that maybe the county has not done and another entity has that I've seen some erosion on, it's like, oh geez, if we can do this, then I hope others could too. But I do have a question just about the scope and it wasn't clear to me if the kind of specific work areas are kind of all that's getting done, or if there's a total kind of once over of the whole road.
Unfortunately, it won't be the whole road.
Okay.
Because of that scope
Yep.
shrinkage.
Yep.
So the key areas that I had mentioned is where all of the work will be done.
Okay. And I think, we'll find out here on November 15th, but I think there'll be significant pushback on the 745 intersection. Not going far enough with that, because I think there's a lot of concern there about the safety there. But we'll see where the public's at there. But that's my knee jerk. But I don't think I have any other questions. I just really appreciate you staying with this and having the public involved and keeping us informed. And yeah, I think it was really, really wise and smart to go after that corner right on 45 there and 7 and get our crew doing that. It's really good to see that work happen. So, Commissioner Starley.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for all your work. I mean, this is, like you say, been going on a long time. What kind of public notice will people have about the November 15th meeting?
So we're just working on that now, actually. I was gone yesterday, so I didn't have a chance to talk with everyone in my office yet. But I think there'll be a couple notices. We talked about it briefly, so there'll be some notice in the paper. I think we'll put two ads or something like that in there.
Maybe WTIP?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever you want. We'll go knock on doors. That's
Yeah,
fine.
right. Get as much out for the folks,
Absolutely.
especially who live there.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Saulson, thank you.
Just a little education for me on the geosynthetics.
Sure.
And what's been our experience of the use?
Sure. To my knowledge, at least up here, I think the sag slump might be the first. I'm sure somebody out there can correct me, but that's just at least to the best of my knowledge. So you're curious, like, why we use them?
Yes.
Okay. So there's two different types, generally speaking. There's one that kind of just looks like a flannel,
Okay.
and then there's one that looks like a lattice work of like plastic, basically. So the flannel one, now it's going to be called that. It's much more than that. Geofabric helps to contain water, helps to contain clay from pumping up through the road. So it doesn't matter how much gravel you put down, that clay will keep coming up and just ruin everything.
So it's a membrane basically in there to help
Correct.
keep that water and keep it down from affecting.
From coming up,
Okay.
exactly. And so that's what that one does. The lattice work one is what provides strength. And so you put that down, the gravel gets in there, and then everything holds together really, really well.
Okay.
It's similar to, if you think of why you put reinforcement in the bottom of a concrete beam, for example, tension. It's really good in that, and so that's the purpose of that. And so that's what we'll be doing through that section. So,
Which, I'm thinking where you were saying that we had so much water and things there, if we had tried to go with a solid surface situation, we'd have ended up having to use something like that anyway.
I think so.
To not have it with the water in the winter heaving and creating problems for the roadway.
Exactly, yeah, and whether, it's a tricky area because it's a swamp, aptly named, and, there's always going to be water there, and so it's not, drainage is obviously important, but in this case, you're just going to drain it back into a swamp, that's going to keep pushing it up, so, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Engineer Haas?
Mr. Chair, I just, if you had a minute, I would just speak again on why this is coming up right now.
Yes, please.
Robbie went back to the beginning of it, and then the last, I think, meeting where we had major planning on this before just recently was in the spring of 2020. Kristen Foster, just before she left. And that's when the scope was reduced. The design services is what actually got approved at that meeting. And then the plan was to go forward and start the construction for 2021, and this was in 2020. And then the change happened when she resigned, and we started searching for a new engineer, and of course there was some, transition time, and so I think that's why it was delayed primarily. And so, but in the meantime, we've been discussing it with Bruce Kimmel of Ellers and with Rena Rogers when she was interim, and with James now. We've had several meetings. And because of this historic low interest rates and all the rumblings about changes potential in those interest rates, this was really our last opportunity to get it done this year if we wanted to beat any change. It's a potential change, but it's a calculated risk. Nobody knows. Bruce will tell you no one can forecast interest rates, but we know they're good right now. We know they could change. So that's the main reason that this is happening now, rather than Otherwise, the construction happening next year, it could happen in January or February, but who knows what happens at the end of the year and early next year, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it makes sense to me, just to get in while the interest rates are low. That reminds me, we've got this public hearing and then, potential action, I presume. Didn't know if there was, particulars that we should be privy to as far as the numbers with the bonds and that sort of thing.
I could give you some, but I think Bruce is prepared to give you a very nice summary.
Okay.
Great.
Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning. It's nice to be back up here with you. Brady, did the pre-sale report that I sent and the resolution get distributed? And I wasn't sure if that resolution was on your agenda at a specific point.
Yeah.
But I can speak to it, or if April
well-
has it and can put it up on the screen, the pre-sale report. It's that pre-sale report that I sent last week with a resolution for...
Pre-sale report, I can confidently say is not in our packet. That much I know.
Okay.
But beyond that, I don't know.
It was received, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can also send it again.
I've got it, Bruce. I can send it to, well, April, you should have it in your email from Thursday.
Right. And there was a draft set sale resolution with that as well.
Yep.
And the resolution isn't a legally required step. We just basically like to make sure that you've had your questions answered and that we're getting the green light from you to move forward with county staff to execute on a bond issue and bring a winning bid to you in December. So,
Okay.
or I guess late November, excuse me, the 23rd. So that can also be a motion if it's not in your packet, and that's just fine. But if we can pull up that report, then I can just walk through some of those details, Mr. Chair, and answer what questions you have. Maybe I'll just start and say, so I think most of you are new to the bonding process, is that right? Okay, a lot of new faces, not Commissioner Storley, but so at Ellers, we're the county's independent financial advisor. We're not affiliated with a bank or an underwriting firm. All we do is advise cities, counties, school districts, townships on all sorts of public finance matters. And so in this process, I am your fiduciary. I'm your advocate to the market, and we only work for you. So there's no conflict of interest. We're not trying to both advise you and buy the bonds to sell to investors. We're just working on your behalf. And the county has had a really successful track record of offering bonds with a credit rating and into the public marketplace, the national marketplace for competitive bond sales. A lot of Minnesota counties do that, and Cook County is no different with your very strong credit rating. It makes absolute sense to do this offering to the overall national bond marketplace instead of negotiating directly with a bank or an underwriting firm. I wanted to point out that the bonds that will be sold here, will be general obligations of the county. So at the end of the day, you're pledging your full faith and credit to the repayment of the bonds. But as Robbie alluded, you'll be using your transportation sales tax to actually make the debt service payments, okay? So it's kind of a double barrel approach where you've got that TST revenue coming in. We'll be using a part of it to pay debt service on these bonds along with the TST portion of your 2018 bonds. But then if those revenues were ever to fall short, which we don't anticipate, but if you were to see a major collapse in that revenue stream, you are telling the investors that you're backstopping it with your ability to use property taxes. And that's why you'll get very, very strong interest rates on this financing. So I'll just hit a few of the points here. Actually, if we could go back to the previous page, great. So the amount of the financing as proposed right now is $6,140,000. yeah, that will work just fine. And that's to fund $6 million of project costs. Now, as both Robbie and Brady mentioned, this is still a little bit ahead of the game, right? So we are going off of a certain dollar amount. If, as we got closer to that November sale date, if you wanted to actually increase that at all or decrease that, we can do that. And so there'll be flexibility even up to the actual sale date to make some adjustments. But for now, Brady and his team thought that $6 million was a good plug, if you will, for the bond financing component. And to the extent that there are project costs above and beyond, or some of the preliminary costs that Robbie mentioned in his presentation, TST dollars, the cash that you have in that account can be used for some of that cost as well. Okay, we're looking at a 20-year term on this financing, as you can see in the call, in term and call feature portion of the report. The first interest payment will be next August of 22. And then the principal payments will be in the following February 1 of 2023 through 2042, so a 20-year term. And we'll have you'll have the ability to prepay or refinance the bonds anytime at or after February 1 of 2031. So it'll be a 9-year basically lockout on the 20-year term from essentially 2022 to 2031. And after that point, you can prepay the bonds, you can, you can refinance, or any combination. And only you have the ability to decide whether to prepay. The bond holders, the investors, they don't get to say, hey, pay up, or they don't get to reset their interest rate either. That's a fixed interest rate for as long as you want it to be in place. I would note that with your bonds that are being supported by the 1% sales tax, we've actually worked quite a lot with Brady and Kelly in terms of, we refinanced those bonds last year, and then we're still accumulating more 1% sales tax dollars to hopefully pay off those bonds early. So you might have a similar opportunity with these TST bonds to pay off these or the 2018 bonds early, and we'll certainly keep track of that as well as refunding opportunities. The bonds will be bank qualified. That just means that if a bank were to buy those bonds, they get an additional tax advantage in addition to tax exemption on the interest. And so they're willing to offer you a better interest rate for that bank qualified designation. On rating, I'm guessing most of you know this, but the county's bonds are rated AA by Standard & Poor's, and that's a really excellent rating. There's only 2 notches higher than that, which are AA+ and AAA. And so for a relatively small, fairly remote community like Cook County, a AA rating, it really indicates that you're doing a lot of really positive things with your financial management practices, your fund balances, and so on. And so I don't see any stress on that AA rating, and that will certainly help to attract bidders with the competitive sale. If we can go on to the next page, I mentioned this already, but we will be soliciting competitive bids. That is a best practice of the Government Finance Officers of America, or GFOA. And again, it's worked very well for the county in terms of getting the best bids on your bond issues and very transparent bidding too. It's possible that the winning bidder will actually want to offer you more than $6,140,000 for the bonds. You might say, well, why is that? And that's because of something called premium pricing, where let's say the market yield on a certain bond might be 0.5%, but the underwriting firm that wants to buy that bond might want to have a 2% or a 3% coupon or face interest rate on that bond. So how do you reconcile the difference between the yield being 0.5% and that coupon being 2 or 3%? Well, essentially they pay you more than $1 for $1's worth of bonds in order to buy that higher interest rate. So what we would do then, because you could get several $100,000 of extra proceeds, unless you want to keep some of that money for additional project funding, we would just use that excess, that net premium, to buy down the amount of the bonds. So it's very possible that next month at this time, I'll come back to you with a final bond issue that will fund $6 million of project costs, but the actual amount of the bonds will be less than $6 million. So I don't want you to think, what in the world is going on? It's all a function of giving the market the flexibility to bid those higher coupons, but they pay for it, and then we use that extra money that's generated to reduce the size of your debt. So probably more than you wanted to know, but since it's kind of a funky thing, I wanted to explain what's going on there and why we want to allow bidders to offer that premium pricing. We've had a lot of success with refundings over the last several years. We've had a great relationship with the auditor's office, and right now there's no debt outstanding that is refundable, but that's because we've done a lot of great refinancings with the county, and we continue to monitor for new opportunities. I know you're wanting to get to the abatement hearing, so I won't talk about continuing disclosure and arbitrage unless you really want me to, but your team is well aware of these post-issuance requirements and responsibilities, and we work with them to make sure that your requirements are covered appropriately. So I mentioned risk factor already. If for some reason the TST revenues, so on to the next page, please. If the TST revenues do fall short, you are pledging your general obligation pledge. I think your team does a great job of keeping track of those factors, and you do have a substantial fund balance that has been built up. That's a nice cushion as well, but we just wanted to raise that. And we'll be working with your bond counsel at Freiberger as well as S&P on some of the next steps for the bond issue. So basically, whether it's immediately following this public hearing or at some other point, we'd love to get any feedback or questions you have, and if not the resolution, then a motion essentially signaling the board's comfort with this financing plan and a direction to move forward towards the bond sale the week of Thanksgiving. A few other details on the schedule of events on the next page, please. We're here today for the pre-sale review. There'll be some internal steps that will be involving Brady and Kelly and James in early November, including the conference call with the rating agency on November 10th. And then on Monday, the 22nd, we'll accept bids and then join you on the morning of the 23rd to present the winning bid to the county. And then we'll look to close the financing, and you would receive the proceeds then on December 15th. Finally, I'll just really quickly note on the next page, you can see the sources and uses of funds. These are estimated numbers, right? So they're subject to change with the winning bid. But you can see under the uses of funds, the estimated deposit to the construction account. I think we are a little bit high on the estimated cost of issuance, so those should be lower as well as we get closer to the bond sale. And so that will allow us to reduce the bond issue a little bit as well. And then on the next page, you can see the debt service that we're estimating at roughly $360-some thousand per year. And so that would be in addition to the TST portion of your 2018 bonds. And again, we've been projecting that with your finance team, and I think we mutually feel pretty comfortable that you've got the capacity to manage both of those debt obligations with your TST revenues, and also with that cushion you have with the existing balances. So I would note here, if you look at the coupons, here we're just projecting the yields, and you can see that they range from 0.35% up to, 2.4%. And that is with a little bit of cushion built in over current market rates. That's just an indication of how low rates are, that your net overall interest rate should be below 2% for 20 years fixed. And it's a really positive opportunity to lock in this financing if you see fit to do that, and just know that you've got the funds on hand to undertake these projects next year. Do you have any questions for me? That was kind of a fast introduction, especially for those of you who haven't been through the bond process, but welcome any questions you have, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmel. And these are the particulars that I was hoping to see, so.
Excuse me?
I said, and these are the particulars I was hoping to see.
Yes.
So thank you for
You've got it.
For presenting
in exhausting
there.
detail.
Any questions for Bruce? All right, and yeah, my question would have been just about the flexibility there in case there is significant pushback in that, and it sounds like there is flexibility, so that answers that, and I don't think I have any other further questions, and just really appreciate the timing and how it can really work in our favor here, because the feedback I hear by and large is just get her done and fix the road, so to what extent, that's where we need to have more conversations, but this is, clearly the way we need to finance that, so.
Great.
And you've heard this before, but just to reiterate, the estimate of this one, we know the bond we're paying now, so between the two bonds being paid for by transportation sales tax and the original one from 2018, Mineral Center is averages about 490,000, and this one, if you look at this report, which is going to be a close estimate, is in the 360, maybe 66, somewhere in there, average. And the two of them add up to about 856,000, roughly. We would cover that with transportation sales tax that was coming in 2 years ago. And, we took a slight dip last year, especially in the early part of the year, and then we roared back at the end of the year. And this year, we're 40% over last year. That's not to say, a recession couldn't come up. We've had them in the past, 2001, the Great Recession, et cetera. So even if you cut back, we're up 40%. If you cut back 20%, we're still adding to our fund balance. And we right now have about 2.3 million in that account. Now, Robbie he's planning to use some of that for other projects, so we'll talk about this later, but, so we're gonna decide, we talked about deciding, like a number to hold in there in the event of a recession, something like that, but it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah. Great. Mr. Hawkins.
I did think of a question for you. Thank you. So I appreciate your report, because I do have a lot to learn on all this stuff. They're a AA rating, and what makes us AA? And talking about our tax abatements that we're going to be discussing next, will those abatements affect our bond rating at all when we go to sale?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. They really won't. Okay. They're really pretty de minimis in the big scheme of things. And what S&P really looks at is your overall financial stability. So your budgetary performance, the planning that you do in terms of capital planning. And so this is actually really positive that you're proactively addressing some of these infrastructure needs. And they like it when counties are trying to get ahead of things and address some issues before they get more expensive. Your fund balances, you have excellent fund balances, and they're appropriately liquid. So if you were to have a financial emergency, you can tap that cash as needed to address whatever situation might arise. In addition, they actually like the fact, I know it causes you heartburn from time to time, but they appreciate the fact that you do receive PILT and other forms of federal assistance. And overall, I think S&P will always be a little squeamish about a tourism-based economy, but we've shown them over the years that this is where people come, not only from Minnesota, but from the upper Midwest, right? And it's a unique year-round destination that is fairly recession-proof. Of course, you see downturns, but I think now, in the pandemic and post-pandemic, they can see how outdoor activities like Cook County has to offer really are a positive, and you're not subject to the same kinds of economic pressures perhaps that other places, like if you had an amusement park or something, might have. So there's lots of things that go into the debt, the credit rating, but with those Tofte abatements, I wouldn't see them having any factor. And in fact, I think what they'll be excited about is the development in the west side of the county and the fact that it's offering workforce housing, because that is something that we've discussed numerous times about a limit or a damper on economic activity is the difficulty some people are having in finding a place to live. So, of course, that's not going to be a panacea, silver bullet, right? But I think it'll be a positive sign of the county trying to do some things to increase the housing stock.
That's great news to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
So what you're saying is our credit rating will improve.
Well,
Oh, you didn't say that. You didn't say that.
I can't say that.
That's just my interpretation.
Yeah, no, AA is super strong, and there are a lot of counties, closer to the Twin Cities, and that the economy is a considerable factor in the credit rating, and even some counties that can take advantage of their proximity to the metro don't have AA ratings. So it is really a testament to the financial prudence of the board and of your staff that you have that AA rating.
Past boards, and current staff.
Mr. Chairman, may I, please? Bruce, I've got a question regarding the possibility if the winning bidder does offer a coupon that allows us to basically buy down the cost of the principal, would that affect the underwriter's discount?
That's a great question. Yes. So if they offer a premium, that discount would actually, whatever discount they actually ask for, we build in an allowance, as you can see in the sources and uses of funds. April, if you'd go to a page previous, the one page up, you can see that if in the event we got what's called a discount bid, we've got an allowance in there for about $70-some thousand. But more often than not, we get a premium bid, and so some of that premium goes first and foremost to pay their basically commission.
Okay.
And in which case, we wouldn't need to actually pay a discount out of the bonds itself, and therefore we also have an opportunity to either increase the project funding and or reduce the size of the bonds. So you're spot on, James. That's what happens when, first thing that comes out of a premium is any discount, and then the net amount is what you get to decide what to do with. And I guess one thing I would like to know, we've thought that aiming for $6 million is a good plug. And this doesn't need to be decided today, but if the board feels strongly one way or the other about maybe taking whatever you can get, for instance, we could potentially see what kind of premium you get on the sale date and do that. I think you're in good shape with $6 million, but, and Robbie's nodding his head, I just wanted to let you know that that is something that we can adjust on the sale date.
All right.
And,
Any other questions? Brady?
and as Robbie said, we should know more before that sale date, when you get the 50% plans and how much we've maybe reduced the cost of the project through the work that they did already. That's great.
Okay. Well, any other questions? Else, I think we can close the public hearing here for the bond issuance of Countywood 45 improvements. And I don't know that we need to take action right now. We have two other public hearings, but I think we could take action right now if anyone so desires.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
I move to move forward with the estimated $6.14 million project cost with bond sales for the County Road 45 improvements.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. There's a motion. Is there support?
Starley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hawkins.
Are we going to discuss our cash balance reserve usage? Because I know that we have 2 million in there now. Are we going to set a certain amount saying we want to save 10% or 20% always to buffer in case of recession? It's just been managed well under Brady, I know, over the years. And I just wonder if we wanted to, as a board, make it more official of what we do not get to spend out of that fund as a reserve.
I think that's a really good question, Commissioner Hawkins, but right now, this is just about the bond issuance, and that would be a separate conversation, but I think that is a very good point and a very important thing, because we won't always have Brady, and it'd be good, and we won't always have this board who, you know, can be on a similar page, but.
Brady's gonna work till he's 90.
Well, that's excellent news. I hadn't heard that, and I applaud it. But yes, thank you for bringing that up, because, yeah, that caught my ear. Yep.
Where does it come in, and what,
Yep.
when do we do that?
Yeah, good point. Any other questions, concerns, comments, discussion for this motion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Engineer Haas. Thank you, Mr. Kimmel.
Thank you, everybody.
And now, we still have 2 public hearings here. And our time has passed, so we are legit with both the Tofte development as well as the SAW bill. And the first scheduled is 5B, the Tofte development. And I see Mr. Risdall is coming forward. Good morning.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, James, Brady, thanks for your ongoing consideration of the Tofte Downtown project. We've presented before you a couple of times, so unless there's a specific appetite for me to present more information again, I'll not do that, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions or concerns you may have. I do want to note, because this is also on today's agenda, the draft resolution for the property tax abatement does have a couple of errors in it on recital 1A. Instead of 6 apartments, there are 14, and instead of 3 retail office spaces, there are 6. And I apologize, I didn't pull this link off the agenda until the weekend. So I sent a note to James and Brady, but it didn't go out until Sunday, so sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you, but we corrected it.
Okay, very good, thank you. So any questions? I know this is a continuation of a past hearing where we also spoke.
Thank you. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you.
One of the things that happens when we as a county have a public hearing and we extended it out, the locals kind of missed the boat. So I've received some calls from folks in the Tofte area, and that was one of the things that they said, wait a minute, how come we didn't know anything about this? But it was presented at the Tofte Township meeting. I was there, both you and Mr. Dietrich. So I said, well, okay, that's another topic. We'll work on that in the future. But so here's a couple questions that came up. Some concern about the septic system. And I said, there's like 10 pages in the report of the septic system in terms of the mound and the size and the scope and how that's all going to fit in between 2 buildings. So I just assured them that everything had been up to code, up to specs and all of that type of thing. And I don't know if you want to comment a little bit about the septic system that's going to serve both these buildings?
Sure. When this project was originally approved by a conditional use permit back in 2000, there was a 2-phase septic system designed. The first phase was built, the second phase was designed but not built, and it was intended to handle the wastewater that would come from these 2 buildings. The standards have changed significantly in the 20 years since then. So we needed to go back and have a new system designed that meets the new standards, that takes into account both the existing flow and the anticipated flow from the new buildings. And we've done that. That's been submitted to the county sanitarian. And my understanding is that there's been dialogue back and forth between he and the designer, and that he is positively disposed to accept that plan. I don't know that there's a specific action that happens on that, other than maybe that being part of the conditional use permit amendment that was approved by the Planning Commission recently. Another question has come up just in the last couple of weeks, that there appears to be some evidence that the existing system is stressed. And we've communicated, and that just, I think, came about maybe as a result of the sanitarian doing another site visit, which he hadn't done for a couple of years. And we put them in touch with Septic Check, which is the company that's been engaged for years now to do semi-annual testing and monitoring of the system. And we've also talked to the system designer about taking this into consideration and giving us input as to maybe any other, any additions or expansions of the planned new septic system. So in a project like this, many aspects of it kind of move forward in parallel, and that one's moving forward too, but I'd say it's not finally resolved. But of course, it has to be before there'll be a land use permit issued.
Okay, very good. Thank you on that. My next question from some folks would be, and maybe Bruce could help in answering this, the tax abatement for so many years, 15 years, I believe is, and they're just wondering, how does that affect, the assessing of that property and the payments, and isn't 15 years too long?
Sure.
That's the question.
Yeah, thank you. So it won't impact, the proposed abatement won't impact the assessed value of the property. Bluefin and their group will pay the full amount of property taxes each and every year as determined by their taxable value and the tax capacity, and also the county, township, and school district and other district tax rates. And then under the abatement, as you know, they would receive the county's incremental taxes back under the terms of a pay-as-you-go agreement. And it's really important to note that even though there's not a lot of current value on that parcel, you would only be abating the incremental new taxes from the incremental new value that would be generated from the development. So you're not abating existing tax base that the taxpayers would have to make up. As to the 15-year term, actually, I think that given the project economics, the proposed abatement term is really warranted. If this were a different construction environment where the cost of materials weren't so volatile and the cost of labor so volatile, and if the developer of this project as well as the Dieter project weren't also trying to keep these units at a reasonable rent level, I could see us coming back and saying, look, you can definitely choose to offer abatement assistance, but we would suggest something more like 10 years or something along those lines. But when we ran the numbers, it really struck us that while the numbers held together, both developers did a great job of putting together their budgets for the projects and then their operating performance. But at the same time, we didn't see really any chance of windfall profits from this project. These are going to be, pretty, I won't say down to the bone types of projects. Of course, they wouldn't do the projects if there weren't some level of profit opportunity. But I didn't see any reason to deviate from their requests, and that's abnormal for me. Usually, we do say, gee, county, you can trim back what you're offering, and here I didn't see in good faith a reason to make that negotiating point.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think I can add to that in any intelligent way. It was well stated.
I'm sorry, did you say you can add, or you?
No, I don't. It was a very thorough answer to the question.
I also don't usually make the developers' points for them, but again, these projects I didn't see anything that made us think either they're smoke and mirrors or that their requests were unreasonable. So as much as I like to poke holes in developers' numbers, this was a situation where I was like, ugh, darn.
And my last question to Dennis is, do you have a name for this? Is it going to be called the Tofte Homestead? Or do you, like we have, you know, the Sawbill Village, do you have a name?
Well, Tofte Homestead comes from the fact that all the land, these lots and the land above, that we purchased in 1999 was the original homestead of the Tofte family. We bought it from the Tofte family. I've never been a very creative marketing guy. I leave that to others. And it seems like our successors as owners of Bluefin aren't that creative as marketing guys either. BFB Management ultimately emerged as their new entity. And no one's put much effort into coming up with a marketing name for this yet. But I have thought about that a couple of times, and maybe I'll suggest to Joe and Papasso that they get their best marketing minds working on coming up with something a little more interesting. But I appreciate the feedback.
Well, you know, originally it was the homestead, the
Correct.
original Tofte family
Yeah.
from the early 1900s.
Yeah, well,
So
you
it
and
would be
you and I knew Seymour and
Right.
yeah,
Sure.
a lot
Yeah.
of the original Tofte
Okay.
descendants, yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Yorkie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note, to the extent, Commissioner Storley, that you've received concerns that people did not know about this being on the agenda. We did advertise this in the Cook County News Herald, which is our paper of record, to let people know that there was a hearing. But to the extent that folks were unaware of it, if there are additional steps that we could be taking to make people aware of these kinds of things, I'm totally open to that, because it is important that people understand when the board is considering these kinds of actions, that they be informed and have the opportunity to provide comment, so.
Right. Well, if I may, on the township level, it's very grassroots. So even like a poster at the post office stating this is what's going to happen at our township meeting, I think would be helpful, so. But, you know, they gave, like you said, they had an opportunity to contact me or any of us. And it's a good lesson, though, I think, in the West End for anybody who is in any of the townships when there's a huge project like this going on, to make sure that the supervisors understand that the public really need to be informed too, by giving them an invitation to come when things are presented. So we'll move forward on that.
Any other comments, questions from commissioners? Commissioner
I
Hopkins?
have questions as it relates to bonding and it's not project specific, so, but it relates to both these, so I don't know when is the appropriate time for me to ask my questions?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. I received an email with concerns that I sent to James, and just for the public record, and I can summarize it just saying the concern was about fairness, and so I guess where I'm going with, here's where my mind, I wanted to close the public hearing and then we could have more discussion.
That probably relates to
Okay.
that conversation, I think.
Okay.
Although, maybe this one.
Well, go ahead,
If you
please.
can, there's a couple here that, when it says estimated not to exceed, gives me the impression it could exceed that dollar amount.
Are you referring, Commissioner, to
In
the resolution?
Yeah.
Well, what we would expect in the, these are the authorizing resolutions, which aren't the final step. It's the board action to approve the abatements, but
Okay.
then you would be basically also authorizing your county administrator, maybe your county auditor, treasurer, also to finalize the terms of an actual pay-as-you-go or development agreement that spell out, exactly how the monies will be transferred once the projects are up and built and generating new taxes, how the monies would go from the county to the entities. And in those actual development agreements, it would be the greater of, or it would be either reaching that dollar amount or the maximum term, whichever occurs first.
Okay.
So, great point. I didn't catch in the draft resolution that there was a little bit ambiguous, but the idea is that if you hit that dollar amount in year 13, for instance, then the abatement ends at that point.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's what I thought,
Yep.
but then I read it and thought, oh, maybe I'm wrong.
And conversely, if you reach 15 years on the Tofte project, and you haven't met that dollar cap, then you're still done with no obligation on the county's part.
All right,
Yep.
thank you. I think that covers that portion of me just making sure it's straight in my head. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, great. And then I guess I just wanted to speak a little bit about the email I received, just the question about fairness, and I guess there's a different kind of fairness. Just looking for, I think, probably more understanding about the abatement process and what abatements are for and that sort of thing. There was just concern that the county is giving something to developers that we wouldn't give to other people. And I just want to point out that we have an application process for abatements. Really, a big part of our discussion has been about the workforce housing side of things. And so there is no upfront cost to the county. And it is going to produce housing pretty lickety split, and also down the road provide a really strong tax base for the organization and the community. And so I can see, and the first time I heard of tax abatements and learned about them, I was also very skeptical, but as I learned more and more, I just began to realize their value and potential and how we can really help our community using them. And so I just wanted to address that with in response to the concern I received there. But is there anything else anyone else would like to share regarding community conversations? Otherwise, we can close this hearing and move on to the next one. All right. Then, thank you very much for your time, and I will close the public hearing regarding the tax abatement of the Tofte development, and then move on to our public hearing for the tax abatement of the Sawmill Village with Mr. Dieter. Good morning, Mr. Dieter.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. It's good to see you all again.
It's great to see you. We've heard from you numerous times. I don't know if there's any other questions from commissioners with specifics in your project. None from me. And again, the only feedback I received, I just expressed in the other public hearing. For the sake of legality, though, I just repeat it that since it's a separate hearing, that I did receive concerns about tax abatements and the fairness, and I just want to point out that there's an application process, and a huge factor in these projects, as far as the county board is concerned, is just the workforce housing side of things, and the benefits that we get right now, as well as the tax base in the long run, without any actual cost to the county right now. So, any other questions, comments from commissioners? Doesn't look like it. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Dieter?
No, just grateful for the opportunity, and I just appreciate all the discussion and dialogue that's taken place. I've met with the township 3 different times now, and you all a number of times, so I think this is all the information I have is forward, so
yeah,
that's all I have.
Thank you very much. It's been a long process, and I really appreciate your work on it.
Thank you.
Well, then, without anything else, I can close this hearing for the Sawmill Village development as well. And then I think we could all use a break, if that's okay. And appreciate everyone sticking around through the previous public hearing. That took longer than I anticipated too. So let's take a 15-minute break and meet back at 10:30 here.
you want to stick around for the action items on the resolutions? I'm happy to do that.
Not particularly. Oh, maybe so.
Well, I just wanted to offer in also to James, if you wanted me to stick
Some of the
around for
questions.
Yeah, mine have more to do with the resolutions and the wording of the
Okay.
resolutions, not necessarily the project.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure I understand
Well-
what it is I'm approving.
Thank you for offering.
So,
wanted to make sure.
yeah, sorry to make you wait. But,
Never. Aren't you gonna move here,
Good to
Bruce?
see you, Bruce.
I heard you were moving here.
hey, it's nice to meet you.
And it's
Yes.
good to see
It's
you.
good to see you. We've met before, but it's been a little while.
And I was at the city when we first met, I think.
remember that,
And then,
yes.
yeah, and then this is my third year here, at the county
And
level.
just, you know, we're doing a little refinancing for the city today, actually.
Oh, all this conversation actually got me thinking more about the city and just the stuff going on there, but.
With that one, it's, renewal bond is using 2013. Anyways,
I
it's
did
small
talk
enough and short enough that we're
few
doing
people
nothing
over the
replacement, so we
weekend
are
that
soliciting
said,
bids from
"What?
banks both here
I don't think
locally,
it's-
regionally, and around the state.
I've narrowed
Also,
it down
actually, a
to
couple
two
national
last
banks
things
that
that I
buy
just
bonds
wanted
like
to
this,
make sure.
and seeing what we get, and so far,
Talking
the
about
first
the
place
same
bid
thing.
is meeting our expectations, so be a nice little savings for the city.
Oh, great.
And Kim kept really good track of how much you've had in prepaid assessments at the city. So we're actually using those monies to reduce the size of the refund.
Oh.
So it's kind of a cool win-win where we're getting better interest rates and we're buying down the size of the bond to reduce the money in the room.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
No, I haven't been all that in touch with the city's goings-ons lately, and just thought, like, boy, there's a lot of opportunity both for the city and then just for us to coordinate and collaborate with, because they've got some bigger projects in mind.
And I'm hoping.
It gets messier then, too.
Yeah. I'm hoping to go and introduce myself face-to-face to Beth, too. The
Oh, yeah.
DDA director.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you need to use the restroom. I just wanted to.
Yes.
Say hi and.
No emergency, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Sure, I want you to say hi.
Very nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. Great explanation, very helpful to those of us that are new, so.
Absolutely. Well, I've always really enjoyed working with Cook County, so I thought, you know what, it's about time for me to get back up here. So.
Well, we
I want you to
appreciate
know
you
that
making the trip.
my cough and cold are truly just a cough and cold, although I should still probably have you do hand sanitizer. I got a COVID test this weekend just to make sure that it was just a
Yeah.
back to school bug and not anything.
Oh, we've all
more,
done the
so,
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all testing all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I'm due for my booster next week. So,
Yeah, I'm excited to get mine too.
Yeah.
Next Thursday.
Well, it's impressive how you lead the state with your vaccination rate here. It's really, I wish the rest of the state were as progressive in this way. So.
Well, we're still having our holdouts as well,
Yeah.
so.
I know you are,
Exactly.
like everywhere, but
Yeah.
it still speaks to your community mindedness, which is great.
Yeah,
So.
all right. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no, it's good to be here.
Thanks for sticking
Oh.
around.
This is great. I miss face-to-face meetings. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of, pre-pandemic, it was easy to say, oh, I wish I could, do video conferencing for more of these and be careful with because,
Right.
because, I mean, it is nice from time to time to be able to Zoom, especially,
Yeah.
instead of driving up from the Twin Cities.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, you just don't have the same level of interaction.
Yep.
So,
No, so I appreciate you sticking around to
absolutely.
make sure I understand it and feel confident in what I'm voting on.
Yeah.
And I know I'm the one that has the most to learn, so I appreciate you teaching me.
Sure thing. Good.
Oh, we all have a lot to learn, Stacy.
And I'm guessing you'll have more of these requests, so it's good
I'm trying to make sure I know, we
to
do
make sure
this
that
right.
you understand. And I would just note also that we'll probably be working with the EDA on sort of a more cohesive incentive policy between the county and the city, just so that there's better, not that things are poorly communicated now, but I think there's some opportunity for improvement, especially with new leadership of the EDA, so
Yes,
that might help with future discussions as well.
good.
Especially when things start percolating again in the city. So.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we'll have to be watchful for, as he stated, these two projects are actually exceptional as far as the level of detail, the level of planning. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I
I would agree.
I was very impressed, actually, when I first saw these and we were going through them. I'm like, boy, these are not some, what you would see for a smaller community being brought forward with that level of,
Even
rigor
some bigger
that's been put
communities,
into
I
this
see
whole
developers
process.
phone their numbers in, and it's like, come on, guys, you're proposing a, $10, $15 million project, and this is what you're giving me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're
Oh,
right.
no, I know.
This project is much better.
No, this.
It's very
these were-
thorough, very thorough.
Both projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Gave you a great insight into their thinking and how they got there. I guess what I'm saying is the ones we get downstream may be a little tougher to pull all the details out.
I
Still have 10 minutes.
I sat down, what am I doing? I'm gonna go outside, for Pete's sake.
Nice to be back out there. Well, it's both the maintenance as well as the smart issues, they're both significant activities, it's really can be Yes, I do too. I do too, literally, exactly.
Right. Good to see you, Dennis. Yeah, you too. And you had a nice little vacation or a big vacation?
Yeah, like another 7 weeks by the time we get
Oh,
back.
my goodness. This is retirement. Hey, we have to look forward to it.
I'm optimistic.
Well, now we think we'll practice through the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But it's, so we're talking like, tax abatement numbers and things that are big. Those just kind of clarify. They're more properly based on these ones that we, and then I did the same thing we did, just got away with that to see.
We'll bring it up to you.
Yeah.
Conversation here. Yeah.
So
We need to give ourselves permission to stand up and move around.
I
a
know.
little bit. Really, don't feel bad about that. I've watched other counties, and actually, they're doing just exactly what you do.
Yeah.
You
Well,
just get up and
Yep.
stretch for even a minute.
Well,
I
it
have-
was
I've
so
actually-
good to get, I made a beeline for out there. It was just so good to get up and
I've
not,
actually done better in these, in the culture of where I came from in the past.
yeah.
We would have days where you were just, basically, you might get up to go to a different room, which seems silly to me, because sometimes it was the people from one meeting going to another room
Yeah,
just to sit down and
more
have another
sitting.
meeting.
No.
And I would often
Yeah.
get up and just stand behind my chair
Yeah.
or walk off to a corner or stretch or this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
sit that long.
No,
It's just too
no,
much.
No, yeah. And most of the time, we're pretty good about getting a break within
Yeah.
an hour and a half or so of our.
Whenever Tim comes in.
Yeah.
That's that's our standard.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Uh,
All right.
But isn't it just so encouraging, when you hear Bruce talk about, our budgeting and our general funding and our
Oh,
AAA
yeah.
bonding? That is so huge.
You can't take it for granted.
Oh,
No, we are
not at all.
so fortunate. I mean,
Yeah.
people have worked hard. I look at Brady and I think,
I know.
And the
Yeah.
previous board for like
Yeah.
doing some major dirty work that needed to
Yeah.
be done to get us back to the right spot.
And
Yeah,
that's
you gotta hold
really-
the line on different
Yeah,
things,
you do.
and sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what you want to do, but it might not be the right time to do
Timing.
it.
Yeah.
And there's just all these things you gotta take into consideration.
Oh,
So-
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Well, it's taken me 7 years to get things worked through.
Yep.
When I first came on, it was, you don't want to have, a tax levy of 19,
No,
20%.
no, I know.
Yeah. Oh,
You know?
that,
But we had to,
yeah.
because the previous years were 0, 1%. because they just kept pushing things down the road.
Yeah.
And then the WIC happened. And then other things happened. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well, and then
Yeah.
you will always get some of these big infrastructure projects
Sure.
and things that come
Yeah.
in, and you have to deal with them, but
Yeah.
many times those are the ones that you don't want to jump too quick, because just as with this one, sometimes you got to step back and just say, all right, you know,
Yeah.
let's really look at this. Yes, we could move ahead and try to put a solid surface type of road on here, but does that really service?
Yeah.
And, you know, when we were having our meetings that we had down in Carlton
Right.
here recently, and listening to others talk
Yeah.
about, they went to a solid surface and thought they were really being progressive and doing the right thing, because now they're set for all this time period. And now they wish they had actually, and they'd be actually considering going back to, you know,
Yeah.
to some gravel road.
Yeah.
And I was like, boy, that makes you sit back and think a little bit.
Sure does. Sure does.
I like to learn from others rather than.
Yeah. Well, and
Having
that's
to
one of
make
the
all the-
benefits of getting together with others, that we all learn from each other's mistakes, as well as we all learn to maybe follow in a new way.
Right.
Because something was effective and did work well. So,
So
It is bad.
I'm actually stealing your medicine.
Well, and the roadbed will be there if they ever want to do it.
Oh, that's right.
Servicing.
Oh, that's exactly
You know,
right.
so you get it ready for now.
Yeah, but you need to, it really is better to put your efforts into stabilizing the road first.
Yeah.
You know, if you're having issues with, you know, real soft spots or other things like that.
Yeah.
like
Those
Robbie
soft-
said, the
those soft
swamp
spots
is
have to
not
be
going
mitigated
away.
Before you put something solid surface
And
down
so,
anyway, otherwise you're
to
just in
stabilize
the
it
same
now will
issue.
help with
You
that
know,
effort.
sometimes it's even worse and more expensive to try to
And then when you
repair.
think there's actually logs
Yeah,
making
let's see
the
if
road
this
bed
works and stabilizes.
from years ago, it's like,
You know, if there's
that's what they had.
Well, even on the one we were talking on the bonding for today, where you had those really
And-
soft
and,
spots and was gonna
you know,
use the
I
synthetic
envision
material to
what will happen
try
when all
to,
that
you know,
work is being
keep that
done,
water
just like
pushed
what
off
happened
and
in the trail.
solidify that, so
But
that
it
in the
is so
spring you
nice
didn't
now.
have people, you know, trying
And
to lose
it's
their
just like,
vehicles in.
you know, you work through a few weeks and people
remember
kind of
driving
settle
out there when I
in.
first moved
And they
there. I was
look
looking
at
at
it,
a house on
they
the
look at the trees planted, they look at the native grasses. And
I
It's like, well, why didn't we do this sooner?
Yeah, exactly.
Takes a while, yeah.
Warming up.
Starting to warm up in
Yep.
the spring. When I was in Geo Metro,
Oh,
I
my.
felt like I was on the moonscape. I didn't know if I was gonna get out of
Right.
it. I mean, you start.
But you knew you weren't interested in that house anymore.
No, not at all.
Yep.
It was a perfect time to go look at it.
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
were-
that's not the one that you want to find out after your first winter there, that, oh my goodness, now I can't even get to work, 'cause you know, or I have to buy a beast of a vehicle to try to get there.
Wow. Taking
It's
notes.
amazing.
That is not.
So you don't drive for this period of time in the spring. Say, I'll be back in May.
Yeah,
Well, in today's world, you might get away with it working remotely for a period of time.
Yeah.
yeah. We'll see what the legislature does with that, I sure hope.
I didn't. Doug's conversation was so
Working
overwhelming.
remotely.
No, I
I'm
haven't.
like, I don't know.
Beyond our meetings.
I haven't.
Well, Bemidji is advertising for people to move there. I think they're offering 10,000 because
I
they
know.
can work remotely. And that's their big push over
He's
there.
using words I'm like, I don't even know.
They didn't even have to advertise
that's-
here.
Yeah.
No, well,
They
and
just showed up. They heard.
They
I
heard,
think it's
yeah.
because people have already been here visiting,
And
they've
they know.
experienced the upgrades and seen it in the internet and this type of thing, so.
Right, right.
Yeah,
The word's out.
That's why I kind of wondered the same thing, and that's where I landed. It's like, well, because they've already been here. They've already experienced it. They like the experience they had. And
Much better than that.
Appreciation.
Not that I'll ever, you know.
That's what you
and now with the grants that
We're technically on the hook
through North this year.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna even,
The ability to expand both on the electrical service and on the broadband service. And so,
Yeah. I've had 4 calls from an area where they have electric, but they didn't run the broadband with the electric. And now they're, all 4 of those people are on their list.
Yeah, those should absolutely be on the list, because if you've got electrical, then the infrastructure's there, just go move it. Because the high cost is in adding that, all the infrastructure for the electrical service. The broadband just tags right off of it.
Yeah, and that was one thing I didn't understand. Why didn't Arrowhead do that if they were putting all that money in to put electrical?
You just hit a point, I mean, as much as you say we're gonna do this, and then the reality sets in, and how much money you're spending, and just how difficult it is, because we said we'd run it to each of these homes right at no cost if you signed up right away. Well, then pretty soon when
these
they're
were people
doing that,
that
there's
were
a
never
real
notified. Yeah, they never got a notification.
But there's
So
a
I
real,
said,
there's a
you
real
get
cost.
on the top of the list, because you didn't get notified before. They were all prior property.
But you think about it, there's a real cost up here. It's substantial.
Yeah.
Because all of that was going underground.
Oh, yeah.
So,
You know what it cost when we built our cabin to bring it down the driveway? There was electrical and broadband to the driveway.
yep.
But just, oh my gosh. That's the cost of having rock.
That's exactly right.
But it's better than all those trees knocking lines down there.
That's right. Oh, I am a huge,
Yeah, it's
huge
like when you're
fan.
putting it in, under it goes. Yep.
The only time I'm not as big a fan is when you're doing that in a city. I mean, it's great
Oh, in town.
because you're, down there, but there's a lot of stuff underground down there that it interfaces with too.
Yes. All right. That's nice.
All right. Well, let's do this. What do you think? Let's do this.
All right.
Okay, that was longer than 15 minutes, but, so it goes. Calling the meeting back to order here at 10:32 a.m. Just got through with 3 public hearings, and now we're moving on to item 9A, the auditors section, auditor powers with economic development abatement resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have the 2 abatements for each of the 2 projects that you've heard of over the last couple months, and just had the public hearings. We can deal with them each one at a time or together, your choice. But the first one I have in front of me, these are both resolutions for the abatements. This is for the Tofte Downtown Mixed Use Development Project by BFB Management LLC. The first paragraphs are recitals. In the first recital paragraph, there was an error. We've taken the information from the first building, not from all the buildings. So it said that in including development of 6 apartments and 3 retail office spaces is in fact 14 apartments and 6 retail office spaces, which is the project. The project expansion estimated in the range of 11,968 square feet residential and 7,804 square feet commercial. The abatement in B would be for a maximum of 15 years with respect to property taxes payable in 2023 to 2038 when development takes place, and the portion of abatement attributable to the county is estimated not to exceed $706,629. This is all authorized under Minnesota statutes. On October 12th, the public hearing was started and then continued and finished today. So the board makes the following findings. The board expects public benefits to be derived from the abatement. Granting the abatement is in the public interest. It will increase the tax base. and other affected jurisdictions, help retain and expand commercial and industrial, and provide new employment opportunities. The property is not located in a tax increment financing district, so the abatement will hereby be approved. The terms, again, are for 15 years. The abatement is subject to final approval by the county of a definitive development agreement, so that'll be coming. The abatement shall be for 100% of the county's share of the increase in taxes generated by the new value of the project. The incremental value will be the property's net tax capacity in excess of its base net tax capacity, which was $1228 for this year, et cetera. And in the final, you'll see that in letter H, that the total amount of property taxes to be abated by the county by this and any other applicable resolutions shall not exceed the greater of 5% of the current net levy or $100,000, whichever is greater. I would ask for any questions.
Thank you, Auditor Powers. Any questions? And Commissioner Hawkins, I think you, oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, could I just make a clarification?
Please. Yeah, Mr. Kimmel.
In response to a question from Commissioner Hawkins earlier, I had indicated that I was interpreting Section 1B as being either the time duration or the dollar amount, whichever comes first. And I recalled after that exchange that it really was worded to be the time duration. And I would say that that's appropriate here just because the developers, and I'm sure the county itself, isn't exactly sure how these properties will be assessed when they're completed. They're both somewhat unique as mixed-use developments in the west end of the county. And so I think it's fair to say that there could be a fair amount of range in terms of where those completed tax values could land. And so then the taxes payable to the county could also deviate from either up or down from this 706,000 that is the estimated not to exceed for Bluefin Bay. So to the extent you would like my input on that, I guess I just wanted to clarify that our analysis showed that the 15-year term, maximum term, was appropriate, especially given the fact that if you think about it, the first year for taxes payable 23 will be on the value that's there as of this coming January of 22. So that's going to be a fairly nominal year anyway. And then the first real year, if you will be for taxes payable in 24. So if you think about it, you're really looking at maybe a 14-year abatement for this project. So I just want to clarify that I misspoke as to the intent of that clause in the resolution earlier, and wanted to just clear that up.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kimmel.
I would like to speak to that same issue if I could.
Okay, Mr. Isbell.
So to arrive at that 706,000 number, first I called Auditor Assessor Thompson, and I've had more spirited conversations with Assessor Thompson about values of things than I have with his four predecessors. He has some new and, to me, novel theories about how to arrive at value. So I ended up taking the tax cost of the Four Directions project in Lutzen, which is 16 units that are similar in many ways, and basing the housing component upon that, and then adding in an amount for the retail, kind of that I came to in conversation with Assessor Thompson. But that's based on a total property assessed value that's significantly less than the cost of construction. If this was worth the cost of construction, we wouldn't be getting an MHFA grant, an IRRB grant, and you wouldn't be giving us a tax abatement. And and Mr. Kimmel wouldn't be advising you to give us one. So we took the estimate that we arrived at of first-year taxes in the manner I just described, and then we just ran it 15 years forward in a pro forma where we had, 40 different line items, let's say, and we applied different inflation factors to each one based upon our kind of best guesses. And that's just the number we came up at. If your assessor decides it's worth enough more so the taxes are going to be $10,000 more a year, then there's going to be significant negative cash flow to this project for the first 15 years, and zero return to $990,000 worth of developer equity. So the 706 number really came from a process. It wasn't the amount of our specific request. And if you go back and look at our pro formas, just like Mr. Kimmel has stated, it's really getting back the county's portion of the taxes in their entirety over that time that makes this project slightly profitable. I think our cumulative profit over 15 years was 1.2% of the developer's cash equity, so pretty minimal. And then the 16th year, it follows back into the red. So it is important, I think, that it be whatever. I think it's a bit of a wild card what the assessment's going to end up being, and maybe a lot lower, maybe a lot higher. But for the project to work, the entire amount really needs to be abated for that time period.
Thank you. Commissioner Hawkins, does this address questions that you had brought up earlier as far as about the resolutions themselves?
No.
Okay. Well, does anyone have any questions about this clarification specifically, or are there other questions in general that we'd like to discuss?
I have
Okay.
another question. I
Please.
would like to understand. So if these properties at some point change hands, are sold, would that come back before the county so that we could would that cease the current abatement? And I get if somebody else new comes in, they probably will need an abatement to make it work just like this, possibly. Does this whole process start again is what I'm wondering.
I'm not sure if Auditor Treasurer Powers wants to answer that, or if I should take a crack at that.
Go ahead. You've seen
Okay.
more of it.
So it's really important to reiterate that these resolutions before you today are just to authorize the abatements, and that's important so that the applicants can say that you've approved abatements in their further correspondence with MHFA and IRRB, and to factor that into the performance, right? But the real rubber will hit the road with the development agreement, and I would say that that development agreement, what we often see in this kind of situation is that it would be the county's discretion whether to allow, upon the sale or the transfer of these properties, it would be your call to allow either that abatement agreement, that development agreement to roll forward to the next owner, or you could essentially terminate it and require the new owner to come back and ask for, the abatement itself wouldn't end, but you could require the new owner to basically negotiate a new abatement development agreement with the county. So that's, I think, probably the best approach, is that it gives you the flexibility to either say, yep, the new owner is doing exactly what the previous owners did in terms of year-round employee housing, so on and so forth. But if there's something about that new owner that you think, or if it it sells for some crazy price because this becomes the next Santa Barbara of Minnesota, then you could always say, hey, let's pause and take a look at whether this abatement should continue.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I mean,
Yep.
wouldn't it be wonderful if these projects just took off and somebody came and said, I want to give you $10 million for that? Hey, and I just wanted to know what happens then.
So I would leave it as your discretion on whether to let it keep going forward as is, or to terminate it and say a new abatement needs to be negotiated, or a new abatement agreement needs to be negotiated.
Okay, so my next concern, I would guess, also goes to a development agreement. And does that development agreement come back before the board, or is that just negotiated in-house between?
Well, it's going to be pretty simple. The resolution does authorize auditor treasurer powers to enter into that agreement, I believe. And I would say that, well, I guess I would look to, the folks that have been part of this, but I think it's typically what we see is that the developer has to build what they said they were going to build, right? If it sits fallow and there's some incremental little bit of abatement, you're not going to give them the tiny little bit of abatement, right? Unless they actually build what they're going to build. And also, I think the key policy point that I've heard time and time again is that this be, workforce housing, right? That you're not doing this so that somebody can flip it into a VRBO or use it as a summer vacation place. So I guess I would see those as being kind of the two primary terms. Of course, a county auditor Hicken might have some other ideas in terms of whereases and therefores, but I think it's going to be a pretty straightforward agreement.
Okay, and thank you for that.
Yep.
So one of the things that was a concern and people talked to me about would be under B here, where it says that regarding rentals of residential space shall require company to obtain proof of Cook County-based employment from at least one adult tenant. And I know that with the Four Directions housing plan, that we have said it needs to be a full-time, year-round workforce housing, and there's only a certain percentage of those units that are available for seasonal. And I don't see anything in our plan that says that these residential units are not just for the developer owner. And so I'm wondering, where does that language come in that says Cook County is developing year-round, full-time workforce housing? Is that in our original resolution? Is it in the developer agreement? And I have a problem voting for something when, that's a gray area, and then it doesn't end up there. So that's my concern. Where does that, somebody needs to help me work this out.
Well, from my perspective, Commissioner Hawkins, I think that the wording in 2B is suitable. The developers are going to have an incentive to keep those units fully occupied as much as possible. And with small unit counts, actually even one unit being vacant for more than a month can really put a ding in the operating pro forma, or a couple months. So I think they're going to really have an incentive to keep those units fully occupied and to meet that requirement of Cook County-based employment.
Right, and I have no qualms. I do not think any of these apartments will be sitting empty. None of them will. I am just worried that there's the possibility that these could be used by our seasonal part-time, or our seasonal workforce. There's constant turnover, and it's not for full-time residents year-round. And I want to make sure that we at least, I'm not against seasonal workers. We know we need housing for them also. But we're using quite a few, over $1 million to help build, and our housing group identified that we really have a need for full-time, year-round housing. So I know that they want to. I'm just, where do we get to put it in writing so we can relieve the fears of the public that says, Bluefin, we're just building their own employee housing? Where does it come in?
Commissioner Hawkins, so to understand your point better, I was a seasonal, well, I still am a seasonal worker for that matter. I was a seasonal, more seasonal worker for 10 years, bartending in the winters and waiting tables in the summers and cleaning chimneys in the spring and the fall. So what your concern is that I wouldn't have been allowed to rent that? Or like, I think if you start narrowing it too much, we're gonna start excluding people that,
Well, I am fine with somebody who has a job in the summer and in the winter here. You change jobs, that's reality of Cook County.
yeah.
There's people who do that. What I am worried about is that we just keep importing workers from other areas every 6 months. That's my concern. That's what all of these apartments could potentially be, possibly, if we don't have it in our development agreement. And I'm just wondering, how do we make sure they aren't all that way?
Well,
Some of them are.
I don't think anybody wants that. Employers don't want that, employees don't want that, and we don't want that. So I have a hard time going down the path of thinking that that's how that might be, because none of us want that. I mean, there are certainly seasons where it's busier and slower for different employers, but I think what all no, I guess I shouldn't say that. What many employers are working towards is that year-round aspect, and one of the biggest challenges for that is the housing. So I think I understand your concern, but I guess I don't know. I mean, if you want to suggest a tweak to the language of 2B, I mean, if you write in for year-round employees, that really, I mean, that makes it much more restrictive because, as I said, with my seasonal livelihood, like I think Mr. Kimmel was saying is that this is probably an appropriate language set, but I guess Auditor Powers, if you worked on this at all, or Administrator Yorkie, if you've had any perspective.
If I could. Actually, if I could just say a few words. So as I recall from the discussion that we had in the Committee of the Whole meetings, both developers expressed a willingness to include language in the development agreements that would ensure that the housing would be affordable and available and designated for people who work in Cook County. Correct. And in my mind, the place to create a mechanism for that to happen is in the developers' agreements. And if both developers are willing to include that language, then I'm confident that we can, insert language in the agreement that will address those concerns and that will ensure that it is workforce housing.
I'd like to speak to the seasonal employment issue, if I could.
One moment, though, Mr. Isdahl. Mr. Dieter had his hand up, too.
May I speak?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
I agree, Commissioner Hawkins, with your concerns, and I've tried to kind of think through the intent, because in my mind, as life happens, there's a difference between year-round housing and then workforce housing, and then in my mind, seasonal housing. That's kind of how I saw the segments. And the intent, the key for me was, what we don't want to use this housing for is for vacation rentals. And it's important to me, and legally I want to be able to write in to each of my rental agreements that there will be no subleasing or a vacation or short-term rental if you take a Sawmill Village apartment. I was trying to also kind of explore different possibilities of who might rent these, and with apartments, would they be prospective tenants, people moving to Cook County for open jobs? For example, I know even the county or the administration or the school district or the resorts might have, people that would be coming in that would want housing. So there, in my mind, seemed to be a verification that they were coming to move and live and work here. I also wanted to be careful not to rule out the possibility for people who were living in Cook County year-round, but may not be working, or maybe between jobs. And that was important to me to be able to provide some stability while they were either moving from job to job, or if they had retired in the county and needed ADA accessible housing in an apartment that we would provide. And I also understand Bluefin's project would provide as well. I am absolutely open to providing assurances that you seek, because I think we share that, and my thought would be to approach that more in the specifics of the actual agreement that the Auditor Powers would strike with Sawville Village. So I wanted to share that context with you. One other comment you brought up earlier, if I can just address that. In terms of the transferability of the abatement with the building, for me, this is a family business, and this is something that I guess I would need to have some security on that transferability, because as this would maybe pass to my adult children, and they would take over ownership and the operations of it, there's an element of risk if the abatement doesn't go with the property within that 20 years. And where we've all kind of been together through the due diligence and the discovery and the understanding of where we all rest, what I can't speak to is in 10 years who will be on those chairs, and I can't speak to the dynamic environment that will be there. So the security that I would request from you today, that as we do write that out, that there is an element of transferability, as long as we continue, as long as Sawville Village would meet the intent that we're signing on to, which this is for year-round housing. So I think as long as the intent goes with the title, and the obligation goes with the title, I would ask for the transferability of the abatement to go with that as well. So those are just my comments. Sorry, one last one, third. I'd like to reinforce some of the concerns that Mr. Risdall spoke to about the taxable market value at the assessment. I have significant concerns about that. And there's volatility that I've not seen in other taxation for housing in my other county, I guess in Hennepin, but also doing some sampling across the state. That volatility in taxation leads to unpredictability, and with these margins, they're very thin. In fact, I think when we initially went through a reassessment and I was looking at potential being taxed on the full $2.7 million of the project, which to Dennis's point is not the value of the project, or we wouldn't be here. It almost was a tipping point where I would have to back out and focus on a project that generated more commercial revenue. I've got the numbers, I think, in a place where they continue to make sense, but I just want to echo that consistency is going to be very important for us to de-risk the project and keep the numbers in a thin black area. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dieter. Mr. Risdall, you wanted to speak as well.
Yeah, I think it's important that year-round, that it does not be restricted to people living and working year-round. All employers would prefer that. Bluefin has been bringing in 30 to 40, probably 25 to 40 H-2B workers a year for some time. And they can work up to 9 months maximum. The H-2B visa is defined as a visa to fill seasonal employment needs, and that sets the 9-month maximum limit. We have many people that come from Jamaica year after year after year, and they support their families back home, and they have to go back home in November or December because the term of the visa runs out. So we don't need as many people in the winter, but we need more than we have locally, so we typically move. One of two things happens. Many of those people switch to work for Lutz and Mountains on a winter H-2B visa, and they stay in the same apartment. But others are replaced by winter J1 students coming from the Southern Hemisphere, which is their summer. And they come in December, shortly after the Jamaican H-2Bs leave, and they stay until middle of March or end of March, and the H-2B workers can come back as early as late April. It's very expensive to employ people like that. Every H-2B worker costs about $4,000. The employer has to pay the immigration fees, round-trip flight back and forth from their countries. And we also have to pay no less than the prevailing wage for the job as determined by the Department of Labor every year. And so the cost is roughly $4,000 per person, but that's small compared to the cost of training and retraining. So we're retraining 2 or 3 people for every single job. And it's far better for economics and customer service to be able to keep people in a job year-round. And the hope is to evolve more toward that once there's more housing available, so when people decide they want to move to Cook County, they can actually find a place to live that's affordable. And for every one of those that happens, we can hire 1 less H-2B worker and 1 less J-1 worker. We have 2 full-time people now. We did a study in 2000. We hired 114 people and onboarded and trained them, and 41 were left at the end of the year. And that's almost all. The ones that left were either American domestic students who went back to school in the fall, or, for the most part, summer J1 students whose term ends at the end of September, and summer H-2B students whose term ends in November or December. That's very, very expensive. It's just churning people through the training process, and they don't really get up to full speed before it's time for them to leave. But it's been increasingly difficult to bring year-round people up here because of the shortage of housing, and kind of the housing piece has to be solved first, and then for the sake of all business, they're going to be much happier if they can start bringing in more year-round people and diminishing the amount of visa hiring that they have to do. But the housing has to come first and start that and create the ability for that process. So we're fine with it being all workers because that's what the county needs, and that's what the West End needs. But at this point, to say the same person has to be a year-round worker in the apartment all year, a lot of those apartments might sit empty while we're crying for employees.
Thank you, Mr. Isbell. Does that get to our concerns here? Is that, or do you have more questions or more concerns?
No, and I appreciate your response, and yeah, as long as the new owner, was in a family business, totally get. I just wanted to make sure that we don't have somebody new coming in saying, wait a minute, that doesn't work for me, the numbers don't work, I want to change it. But as long as it goes with the developer agreement, I'm new to this. I'm going to figure out what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I don't know, so I appreciate the discussion. And I was just totally also business owner, employed, seasonal workers. They're an important part of our economy. Couldn't have made it without them. So I am not trying to denigrate that worker or say we don't need housing for them also. I'm just trying to make sure that this doesn't come out as taxpayer-funded Bluefin gets to expand, okay? Just make sure all the ducks are in a row, and I've thought that however we do this, we're all on the same page about that.
Absolutely, and that was brought up at the Planning Commission last Wednesday as well for the conditional use permit and was discussed.
Very good. All right. Any other questions, concerns, language specific or other? It sounds like I think we're all on very similar pages, And these resolutions are authorizing Auditor Powers to, no pressure, Brady, to, to sign those development agreements. I'm sorry.
I'll be signing, but not writing.
Right. Right. But I think you understand where we're coming from as well and our concerns and all that, so. Well, with that, I think I can entertain a motion, is where I've been led.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner
Just a
Storley.
clarification. Under the recommendation, is that the resolution we want?
Under the
Or it
recommendation.
starts
Yes.
approve resolution? Can we add the word, do you think authorize would be important too to add to it?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
Where we would say authorize and approve a resolution for economic development abatements.
Oh, okay, yeah. Within the resolutions, there's an
Yeah.
authorization in there. The first one is item 2D. County Auditor Treasurer Brady Powers is authorized to execute a development agreement consistent with these terms, subject to approval of the county attorney. And then the second one, I believe, is there too. Yes, 2D again.
So do we need all that, or can I condense it?
Well, I think, yeah, I'm comfortable with how the resolutions are written.
Okay.
Okay, but if there are concerns, we should talk about those. But it does give authorization to Brady pending approval of Molly.
Okay. So I'm going to make the resolution where it is under recommendation on our first page.
Okay.
Authorize and approve.
Okay,
And Molly, is that sufficient?
What you're authorizing or approving is the attached draft resolution. And that
Okay.
resolution includes it includes approval of the development agreement, all of that. So as long as you are, you're including this draft resolution, you're including all the language you need.
Okay. I'm going to make a stab at it.
okay,
Okay.
we're with you.
I make a motion to authorize and approve by resolution economic development abatements for the downtown Tofte building project and Sawmill Village project as requested and discussed at the public hearing on October 21st, including all the draft proposals by Auditor Brady.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. Just a point of clarification there to amend, it's October 26th, I'm sorry?
Correct.
October 12th and 26th.
Okay,
Yeah.
12th and 26th.
very good. Oh, I see, there's the 12th, yep. Okay. That amendment is, yeah, I'm assuming, good. Okay, so we have a motion, Commissioner Starley, support by Commissioner Swalson. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. There.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you again for your consideration of, your lengthy consideration of, and your continuing support of these developments. I think they'll make a big dent in Cook County's housing problem relatively quickly, which is not easy to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and yeah, this was our first
Thank you for bearing
abatement.
with us. Sometimes it's hard to be
Through the
first.
training process of.
Yeah. Yeah,
You ask good questions, and it seems like everyone's intent is to get the good projects done, which makes it pretty easy to have these dialogues. So thank you.
appreciate it, thank you.
I
Thank-
would echo that. Thank you very much for this. I'm grateful for the trust and hope to continue to see it through. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rinky.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks for sticking around.
Absolutely.
Making me feel more
And-
comfortable.
And I'll talk to you next month. Thank you.
Was the motion for both?
Both.
Yep.
Yep.
Are you sure?
We weren't going to put you through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, that brings us on to item 9B, General Fund Budget Review.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is the third quarter for the general fund. And in your packet, you see the report. Draw attention to the summary. At 75% of the year, you can see that revenues are at 84%, so it's above budget, and expenses are at 72%, so expenses are a little lower, revenues are higher, and our net levy cost is 58% at 75% of the year, which is just a positive indicator. I have noted, highlighted in yellow, some of the overages and unders in the revenues and expenses, and then provided an explanation. And rather than go through each one, I think I would just ask if you have any questions on any of those, or any others.
Thank you, Auditor Powers. Any questions for any of the particular line items there? Commissioner Hawkins, please.
Just the last one, I'm assuming is just a typo, but I want to just verify that
Sure.
YMCA operations, that we did get paid in 2020 and 2019?
Each year, actually.
So,
So,
I don't know, this is 2021's budget report, so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that
right. So that
it's
is a,
saying that
it is a typo.
it was,
2020 and 2021 is what?
Yes.
Yep.
2020 and 2021.
I just wanted to verify that we don't need to call up the city and say,
No.
pay your bills.
No.
Good catch. Any other questions from commissioners here? It's encouraging. Thank you for the report. I think we'll need a motion
Yeah, I would
to
just ask
accept
for-
the report. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I will make that motion. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Brady. Moving on to item 10, Administrator. 10A is the Chronic Wasting Disease Resolution. Administrator Yorkie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, good morning, Commissioners. Just wanted to bring this forward. This is something that Commissioner Hawkins, who is your liaison to the Northern Counties Land Use Coordinating Board, brought forward. M-Club is requesting that its member counties pass resolutions urging the state legislature to take action to prohibit the establishment of new captive deer farms, because these can be a source of chronic wasting disease and contribute to the spread of CWD. And so the resolution would be to, for the purpose of protecting the counties and the state's deer population, and there is no impact to the levy. So,
All right. Thank you, Mr. Yorkie. Any questions around this item? Not aware of any deer farms in our county.
Yeah, maybe I should just speak to
Yeah,
that.
please.
It was not an issue that really did impact Cook County, but it did significantly affect some of the other counties in the N-Club. And so they just asked everybody to support it. So the attached resolution I noticed is St. Louis County Boards, so we'll have to fix the resolution as it stands. But they were just asking for support from all the counties. Correct. Said I would bring it up.
and while we don't have any deer farms, we certainly are susceptible to the spread of CWD, so.
Any concerns or anything else? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion here.
I'll make the motion to approve sending a resolution of, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I changed pages.
That's okay.
Resolution for sending, thank you. Where's the wording? Approve resolution urging the state legislature to prevent the spread of chronic wasting disease by prohibiting captive deer farms.
And Sullivan seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Hawkins and support by Commissioner Sullivan. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Yorkie. Moving on to 10B, HRA Board Membership.
Yes, and this is just a follow-up on a discussion that you had at the last meeting where you appointed 5 members to the new Cook County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. There was discussion at that meeting about the possibility of adding a couple of additional members to make it a 7-member board. This is something that is allowed by state statute, and that statute includes a reference to the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 24, or I'm sorry, Title 24, Part 964. And that basically speaks to the requirement of including a tenant to participate on an HRA if 2 additional board members are selected. So if you were to appoint two additional members, one of them would have to be a renter. And so I just put this on the agenda so that you all could have further conversation about it. As it stands, I mean, the HRA can move ahead and can function with 5 members. But if there is a desire to expand the membership, that is something that you could consider doing.
Just a tenant at all? It doesn't have to be a tenant of the HRA or any particular building, or it's just tenant at large?
It says, hang on just a second, Tenant Opportunities Program. My understanding is that it's meant to be a tenant of like an apartment complex. I don't know if it would refer to a renter in a single-family home.
And then,
So looking at the, hang on just a minute, please. Under the definitions of that particular regulation, I'm not seeing, well, it says eligible residents. I guess it specifically refers to members of public housing and Section 8 programs.
okay, so that narrows it.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a great thing. And we could expand the board there. We don't have to take any action today. That gives us a little more information. Does anyone have any thoughts, knee-jerk reactions?
Yeah, I
Nothing
guess
right now? Okay.
It's hard to know if it should be now before it gets underway, or should we let them get together and meet and decide? I guess so.
So I can add a little information to that. I did contact all the HRA board appointees last week requesting their availability for our first meeting. That would take place the week of November 8th or 15th. And I did hear back from all of them, and so we're now in the process of trying to set their first meeting, which would occur in 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't necessarily want this board to feel pressured to add a couple of members. And I think probably it would behoove you to maybe spend a little bit more time thinking about how that could be done. as I've said before publicly, we've got a really strong board. I do think that it will be focused not simply on creating more affordable single-family housing, but, the full range of housing, including apartments. And I think as we get further down that road, it would be advantageous, certainly, to have somebody who is participating, who's maybe in the Section 8 program, and maybe even the seventh appointee who might also be a tenant if there's value in doing that. But I think we would want to take some time in making sure that we don't have a basis to make a choice right now. We haven't done any outreach to folks who are participating in Section 8, the Section 8 program currently. So that's something that would require more time.
Yeah, I feel like I need to learn more about the requirements. I certainly, as I said before, don't want to hold anything up here, and we always can expand it down the road. So I think we keep things moving and we keep learning and then develop as we go, if that's agreeable.
I would agree. I think
Okay.
it's so important that we get this group to work.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the update there, Administrator Yorkie. And we can just keep on rolling here and see if we can learn more as we move along. So that brings us to item 10C, 2022 class and comp study.
Right. And so this is also follow-up to last week's Committee of the Whole meeting, where you all received information from Tessa Melvin with David Drown Associates regarding a proposal to help us do a market analysis, do a classification and compensation study. There were several scenarios presented in her PowerPoint, different levels of assistance that we could get from DDA. And I know there was a desire to have further discussion about these options. I did mention in the COW last week that Pamela Dixon, our former HR director, has volunteered to continue, or to complete rather, the job descriptions that she got about halfway through and revising before she left us about a month ago. And so...
Clarification,
yes.
She agreed to, versus volunteered, she agreed to be contracted.
Poor choice of words. Yes. No, she'll do it for free. Yeah, good point of clarification. She would be willing to contract with us to complete that work. And so I just wanted some additional feedback from the board today about the options that were presented and what your thoughts on those were and how you think we should move forward on this.
All right, Commissioner Starley.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking this over a few times, and I think we have some good things in place. So I'm kind of looking at just the ongoing maintenance annually, updating job descriptions, updating salary if that's needed, because we do have a good basis here. That's my thought.
And one thing that I would say in response to that is, this would enable us to do a third of all of our job descriptions annually. So it would be 3 years before we got to a point where we had updated all the job descriptions and updated the full salary plan. And I think that's a little bit tricky to do, given where we are. There's a lot of churn going on in the job market right now. And we are seeing that as an organization. Actually, we just had another employee submit a resignation yesterday. And we now have more vacancies. I'm actually starting to lose sleep a little bit over the number of vacancies that we have. And I think part of why it's important to move forward with this now is that we need to make sure that our compensation package is going to enable us to attract and retain employees. And that's something that we seem to be having difficulty doing right now. I'm not suggesting at all that it's unique to Cook County government or necessarily a result of a flawed compensation plan, but it's clear that the time to really assess this is now, to make sure that we're not in a position where we are going to be losing more staff in the coming years. And so I have a very strong interest in trying to make sure that we move this forward in a timely way to make sure that we are competitive in attracting and retaining especially staff.
So, yeah, so I think to clarify what Commissioner Storley was saying, was just recognizing that we do have this base that we have, and that we do need to maintain it and update it regularly, and to speak to what you're saying is that that's important. We also need maybe some more data or adjustments sooner than that.
Potentially,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So, if I could.
Please.
As I'm hearing the discussion, I hear our county administrator saying he's very interested in making sure we've had the market analysis to ensure that we're paying our people appropriately per the market that we're in. That's a market analysis. Whereas Commissioner Storley, you were looking at it from the ongoing maintenance, which were two separate pieces of this. And were you thinking, Commissioner Storley, that our pay structure was sound and so that you didn't think we needed another review?
No, I don't believe it's sound.
Okay.
It's just basic right now. We need to look at it.
Okay, so the market analysis is
Yes.
still something you were thinking that we
Right.
might need, but possibly even in addition to the market analysis, we may want to sign up for the ongoing maintenance. Okay, I just wanted to clarify to make sure I understood where everybody was.
Right.
Okay. Because I also feel that 5 years ago, we did the study. A lot has changed in 5 years. I'm hearing our county administrator say we're starting to lose some people. I'm not privy to what's being said on the exit interviews and things, but he's concerned that a part of that may be in the pay piece of it. So that would drive me to saying, yes, we certainly need to look forward and move forward quickly with a market analysis. And then how we get that other piece to maintain it and keep it going, I'm certainly open to entertaining the maintenance piece of it, but the market analysis, I think, is really key for us right now.
Yeah. Commissioner Hawkins.
And I know we discussed this at our last meeting, but can you remind me, the calibrate current pay grid, how that fits into this? Don't we need to if we do a market analysis or not? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's, my understanding is that they'll do it or we can do it.
Okay, and so that's I'm like, it has to be done, so.
Yeah, or like determine pay philosophy, that's our job,
That's correct, but when I look at these, how I see it, you got the analysis, and then they hand over the analysis, and you basically take it forward from there. Or the second structure was they'll do the market analysis, and then they'll take that analysis and evaluate our jobs. That's at a higher tier premium for that. And then, if you would like, then they will take that evaluation and set up a pay grid calibration. In other words, they will give you the recommendation of, based on their analysis and based on reviewing your jobs here, this is what they believe the pay structure should be for those, for each of those jobs. And then that's at that, higher one. And then if you want to go all the way out, they'll do a budget implementation for you as well, which I wasn't all that interested in personally. Maybe others are, I don't know.
Thank you for clarifying.
That was just my view of it, and I wanted to do a check and adjust with everybody else and see if I was reading it
That's
properly.
how I read it as
Okay.
well and understood it, so. And I would also concur that I'm not so interested on the top one with the budget implementation. I think we can handle that, and with our current staffing at least. And But I am curious about the pay grid calibration and that one, that kind of that $17,000.
Well, correct.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, my view for the board to consider is, with our changing people that we have right now in our HR process and that type of thing, I think you'd be asking a lot to take those folks that are new in those positions to take a market analysis and then do the evaluation and bring that down to the working level to be able to make those adjustments.
That's a good point.
That's a tall order for the folks to do. And certainly, I think it would be challenging to get that done in a timely fashion to where the employees felt like once you start into this type of process, people are anxious to find out what the results are going to be.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I will be as well.
So granted, there's a higher cost to doing the market analysis, pay grid calibration, and that type of thing, but it isn't that, the differential isn't that significant, and I think it would be worth that to be able to bring forward the results of that to the employees. That's just my position.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we're all on a similar page there, and then we can have further discussions about the maintenance down
Correct.
the road.
Yeah, the
Separate,
maintenance
okay.
keeps coming back into my mind too, Commissioner Storley, but I'm just not certain whether that's something that we need right now. I think further discussion on that one in conjunction with what's the better way to go. Do we turn it over to these folks to go on a annual maintenance, or do we feel comfortable that, as you said, we've started down this road, we just needed to get those job classifications and things finished up, and possibly going with the former HR director to contract that and achieve that, then at least you'd have consistency in the product that you've brought forward.
And that's the part I really like, is if we had Pamela continue to work on those job descriptions for the sake of consistency. I think it's really
There's
important.
value there.
Yeah.
And there was a trust built
Yep.
between, that she had built with the people that she was working with to develop those.
Yep.
That's
Trust and respect,
hard
for
to,
sure.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, I think we're talking very similar talk here. We're all looking at the market analysis and pay grid calibration, I think, if that's okay. And so Administrator Yorkie, do you need more from us?
I do not.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Very good.
Thank you.
And then down to item 10D, Administrator updates.
So just a couple of things. We are in the middle of starting union negotiations. We have met with two of our collective bargaining units so far. We have a third meeting scheduled this week with the third bargaining unit. And after that, we're going to be regrouping and kind of looking across all the proposals and seeing what we can offer as a counter offer, trying to make sure that we're achieving some level of consistency across all three agreements. And so I just wanted to let you know that's going on now, and that will be taking up a considerable amount of my time in the coming weeks. The other thing, and it's noted on your agenda further down, but we are having stakeholder meetings. Senator Tom Bach and Representative Rob Eklund are going to be in town Friday and Saturday, and there are meetings scheduled to take place in the West End and up at Grand Portage. We have tentative agendas for those. Those will be finalized and posted today. And we're going to have a variety of community partners from education, from healthcare, from business and development, and cultural, arts and culture, to present their interest and to have a discussion about how Cook County may want to work with our legislators on issues that they're dealing with. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we had scheduled, or we had planned to hold the Truth in Taxation hearing on Tuesday, December 7th. And we scheduled that before we realized that that is also right in the middle of the Association of Minnesota Counties annual meeting, which is going to be down in the Twin Cities. And so to enable this board to attend the annual meeting, we would need to move the Truth in Taxation hearing. And what I'd like to propose is that we move it to 6 p.m. on Thursday, December 9th, That would be after we return from the AMC annual meeting. It would also be before the first business meeting that is scheduled for December 14th. So that would give us time, if there are any issues that come up in truth and taxation that we need to do follow-up on before the board approves the final budget and levy, we would have some time to do that before the first business meeting.
We do have community leadership meetings scheduled, but then truth and taxation would be after that.
Yes, well, we would have to reschedule that
Okay,
meeting,
okay.
which
That's, yeah,
TNT is
priorities.
priority.
Yep, yep.
Well, I appreciate the discussion because COVID has thrown loops all over the place, and we didn't have anything last year with AMC. We weren't even sure by late summer if we were going to have AMC. And it's really important for all of us to be there in our various respectful committees. And so I'm hoping that we can move it to December 9th.
Yeah. What loops does that throw in our noticing or whatnot? Anything?
I think we would, I don't know if anything's statutory, but of course it's going to be in the minutes. I think we should put notice in the paper. Since some have heard it the other way.
Well, yeah,
Everyone is
your
gonna
really
be-
nice article called out on the 7th.
Yeah.
And
Part two.
That concerns me,
It does me too.
but, and then also just with the
Well,
mailing notice.
they will get the notice in the notice that they receive at home. So that's but we know how information travels or doesn't travel.
Or doesn't.
Some-
But that
Both and
information you
doesn't.
get in the mail, that's something everyone opens. So,
Okay.
So
They don't all read
there's
it.
some risk there that someone will still,
Well, it can't be easy, you know?
yeah.
I think that's important too, what Commissioner Storley said, just the AMC annual meeting is quite important. And clearly truth and taxation is very important too, so I wanna do both. I think moving it to the 9th would make a lot of sense. My biggest concern is just the confusion that would call with article in paper or any other notices that was given. But if the mailing is accurate and delivered on time, then I guess that's as least concern as I can be at this point.
and we can certainly get the word out
Yes.
on WTIP and on Boreal and in the paper, as Brady mentioned.
One thing I would note is that the proposed alternate date would be 2 days after the date that that we initially agreed on. So if somebody does show up on December 7th and there's no meeting, presumably they would contact us to ask why there is no meeting. We could tell them, well, it's on Thursday. So better to move it back a couple of days than forward.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okie dokie, well, that means we need to set that in, we need to make a motion for that, I believe.
Yeah, I asked for that.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion to reschedule our annual Truth and Taxation meeting for 6 PM on Thursday, December 9th, 2021. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. Any further discussion?
And the motion includes 6 PM.
Correct?
Same time, same place, different date.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Any other update?
That is all I have.
Mr. Yorkie? All right. Moving down to item 11, employee concerns, commissioner concerns. Any reports or meeting updates from commissioners? Only thing I would bring up is I've been getting, I'd say significant communication from concerned residents regarding the county's role or not, or lack of role in the proposed Lutzen expansion. And I'd say have had considerable conversations and learned a lot, and And, whereas the county doesn't have, this is a federal process, so we don't necessarily have a role here. Some of the concerns I'm hearing, so first off, what I try to do is explain that, and then also say in this federal process, it's very important for our citizens to look at the EIS, maybe go to the table of contents, find areas that are of particular interest, go through that. If there's things that you really like, note that in a comment. If there's things that you have concerns about, note that in a comment. But really, the Forest Service needs specifics there. You can't just say, I love the project, or I hate the project. Like, that doesn't do anything for anyone, aside from maybe the vent. And so getting those particulars is very important in comments. And after I explain that to people, they say, yeah, that's great. What is the county doing? And so I say, well, it's not really a county issue. It is in our county. It is in our community. But there are aspects that I guess could impact the county organization, largely emergency services and potentially human services. And so I'm assuming you all have also had correspondence, and it's, I hesitate to put it on the agenda if we're not going to have any real deep conversation, but I want to bring this up as community leaders that there could be a role for us to either facilitate more conversations, to really try to work through particular concerns, or not, if we're just going to muddle it by, getting the county more involved. But I thought it could be an opportunity to talk through things, to work through things, if we wanted to do that on a future agenda. I would encourage it, but again, I'm not going to force it on the board to talk about that. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and didn't know if anyone wanted to share any other conversations they've had, if they've gone much differently than mine, or if there's been frustrations or things you're excited about.
Mr. Chair? I've had several conversations with members of the public, not only my own constituents, but just people in the community that I know. And the one thing I'm really pleased about is the U.S. Forest Service did extend the public comment period, and I think it's very important we help get that word out that has been extended to December 9th, which is now a date that we're busy with truth and taxation, but it gives people an opportunity to really dig into that EIS, and it is a very lengthy document. It's complex, and there's all kinds of implications. And so I would just really encourage our community to read that, to ask questions, and again, as you mentioned, Commissioner Mills, to be very, very specific with responses that they make to the U.S. Forest Service.
Yeah, just, I quickly took a step back from the issue. I wasn't on the board at the time, but I believe Commissioner Storley was at the time. Chairman Dishaw was on the board as well, and there was just some other dynamics going on, and since then, and so the board at that point did not take any action. Since then, Chairman Dishaw has more or less asked point blank at a community meeting, will the county support Grand Portage in whatever stance they're taking as far as land use? And everyone kind of backed down, and I didn't fully comprehend what he was getting at, and now I do. And whereas I don't know that it's wise for us to take a stance one way or another, I think it could be important to talk about the impacts and just the partnerships we're trying to form and working together, whether it be in Grand Portage or it be on the west end with the ski hill, just trying to bridge those differences of how things should be used. I see as an opportunity, but again, it could just be stepping in it, and so there's a risk there too. So yeah, but I haven't had further conversations with Chairman Dishaw about this specifically, but now I'm understanding more about what he was getting at and plan to. So, but if the rest of the board is kind of good with where things at, maybe I'll leave it be for the time being, but I did reach out to the Forest Service to try to find like what is appropriate, what precedent, and it sounds like by and large across the country, when issues like this come up, there almost always is local involvement with local government involvement in one way or another. One thing I would like is for us not to individually, take stances or whatever, but work more as a board. And so that's something I would hope for, but we can, as a board, not do anything too. So that's also a united front, but just want to throw it all out there and see what happens. So I'll leave it at that for now, and please just encourage people to give their comments and to be involved and be informed, because it's a significant project. So, all right, 11B, meetings to note. We've gone over all that. Item 12, correspondence, the 1% local option sales tax. And that brings us down to the most exciting part, item 13, adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.